Chapter 2546. Unknowingly, 5 years had already passed. During these 5 years, Shinwu continent's development had become increasingly prosperous, and it was on the verge of returning to its former glory. The 3 divine kingdoms were stable, and their systems were sound. There were basically no major issues that the divine masters needed to worry about. Dark North Mountain had completely declined. The few surviving demons had all hidden themselves in dangerous places and suffered in torment. They no longer dared to show their faces in public. Tianju Mountain was also rapidly expanding, and its development was extremely prosperous. In fact, Tianju Mountain's power had even surpassed what it had been 1,000 years ago. After the Huanglong Taoist had become a martial god, he had taken over the position of sect master and commanded great authority. He now had more than 20,000 disciples, 500 tribes and cities under his control, and more than 300 million people. On the other side, Chen Chen and Yiya were also 5 years old. The 2 children were growing up healthily. Chen Chen resembled Yun Yao in that he was exceptionally handsome and had a noble and divine temperament. Yiya's appearance was more like Ji Tianxing's. Not only was she very beautiful, but she was also very clever and cute. As the 2 of them gradually grew up, they gradually displayed unparalleled talent and intelligence. Although they had not yet begun to cultivate, they had only learned the languages of the various races and understood the customs and culture of the 5 elements realm. However, they had photographic memories, and their small brains could hold information that was as deep as the ocean without a trace of confusion. Even their personalities were gradually being revealed. Chen Chen had been handsome and cold since he was young. He did not speak much, but he was very calm and wise. Yiya was a natural beauty, and she would definitely grow up to be like Yin Yao and be known as the world's #1 beauty. Her personality was kind, lively, and cute. She was also a little eccentric, and she would often say things that made people laugh. The 2 children were so perfect and cute that Yun Yao and Ji Ku were very gratified and loved them dearly. Ji Tianxing was the same. He treated the 2 children as the most precious treasures in his life, and he took good care of them. This was especially true for his daughter, Yiya, who loved to pester him. She would be mischievous whenever she had nothing to do, and she would even beg for mercy afterwards. It did not matter how ambitious Ji Tianxing was, or how decisive he was when he killed people outside. When he saw his daughter crying, his blood would immediately melt, and he would turn into a doting demon. Everything seemed to be perfect. Regardless of whether it was Ji Tianxing's family, friends, or children, or the situation on Shinwu continent, everything was progressing in a positive direction. However, in the depths of Ji Tianxing's heart, there was a hidden worry that he couldn't get rid of. As Chen Chen and Yaya continued to grow and become so perfect and adorable, Ji Tianxing's worries grew stronger and stronger. He would often recall the ruthless words left behind by the Southern Expedition Marshal before he escaped from the 5 Elements world. He was very clear in his heart that the Southern Expedition Marshal would not let this matter rest. Sooner or later, he would come back again. After all, the Southern Expedition Marshal had seen the miraculous effects of the Origin Stones and understood the uniqueness and power of the 5 Elements world. When the Southern Expedition Marshal recovers from his injuries and reinvigorates the 5 Elements world, it will be the true end of the world. At that time, the Southern Expedition Marshal would definitely bring more experts and a stronger fleet. Not only did he want to invade the 5 Elements world and seize the Origin Stones, but he also wanted to kill all the martial gods. Ji Tianxing didn't want to see that happen, and he would never allow that to happen. No matter what, he had to think of a way to prevent such a tragedy from happening. Not only for the people of the Shinwu continent, but also for his wife, children, and friends. A bold idea grew in his mind, and it grew stronger and stronger. The emissary of the divine ruins is already dead, and no one can open or enter the graveyard of the gods. The 5 Elements world doesn't even have its final trump card. If the Southern Expedition Marshal invades again, we won't be able to resist, and the result will be a tragedy. No, I have to take the initiative to attack and kill the Southern Expedition Marshal, and delay the Heaven Punisher's army. Even if I can't destroy the Heaven Punisher's army, I have to delay them so that they can't attack the 5 Elements world. This idea took root in Ji Tianxing's mind, and it became more and more profound. As time passed, he quietly made his preparations. Half a year later, he had made all the necessary preparations. While Yin Yao and Ji Ke were in seclusion, he left behind a jade slip and quietly left the divine tower. Of course, he took Qian Yu and the Black Dragon with him. Qian Yu and the Black Dragon had long since reached the 9th level of the martial god realm, but they still couldn't see any hope of breaking through to the true god realm. They were tired of cultivating in seclusion, and had long since wanted to go out and explore. When they heard Ji Tianqing's plan, they volunteered to follow him. Ji Tianqing brought them out of the divine ruins and rushed to the hidden dragon abyss in the north of Tianqing's divine kingdom. Along the way, Ji Tianqing and Qian Yu stood on the black dragon's back and sped through the sky. Qian Yu was filled with joy and excitement, and he couldn't help but ask Ji Tianqing, "Old Ji, with just the few of us, can we really cross the void and kill the Southern Expedition Marshal?" Ji Tianqing smiled. "Of course. Not only the Southern Expedition Marshal, but we also have to delay the Heaven Punisher's army and create pressure for them, so that they can't attack the Five Elements world." Wow. Qian Yu was even more surprised, and he exclaimed in disbelief, "Old Ji, isn't this idea too crazy and exciting? Can you tell me what your specific plan is?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and explained, "I don't have a specific plan, only a main idea. The rest is up to us. We have to go through the temple under the lava ocean, leave the Five Elements world, and go to the outer space. Then, we will use the divine ship to travel through space and rush to the Purple Cloud planet. The Heaven Punisher's army has already taken over the Purple Cloud planet, and they want to take control of the entire planet. They are fighting everywhere. In this way, the number of troops stationed on the Purple Cloud planet will not be too many. As long as we find a way to sneak into the Purple Cloud planet, we can think of a way to deal with the Southern Expedition Marshal." Qian Yu nodded and said in agreement, "Old Ji, this is a good idea, let's do it. After all, the Southern Expedition Marshal is the strongest in the Purple Cloud planet. As long as we kill him and delay the main force of the Heaven Punisher's army, we can save the Five Elements world. The fleets that are sent out to fight are all led by generals like Fu Long, and there are less than 100 warships. Even if they invade the Five Elements world, they can't defeat your two wives." A day later, Black Dragon entered the hidden dragon abyss and went straight to the lava ocean. Ji Tianqing met Bai Long and Lan Kuan in the temple of the human race in the Earth's core cave. White Dragon had just collected a large number of dawn stones, and was counting them. When he saw Ji Tianqing, he quickly put down what he was doing and came up to him expectantly. "Master, why are you here all of a sudden? And you have two pets with you? Look at you, where are you going to cause trouble?" Ji Tianqing looked at him with a smile and said in a playful tone, "We are going to cross the void and destroy the evil Demon King to save the world. Are you interested?" "Save the world?" White Dragon shook his head in disappointment. "I'm not interested in that. If you want to conquer the universe, collect beauties from various races, and open a harem, then count me in." Chapter 2547. Bai Long's eyes shone brightly when he mentioned conquering the galaxy and collecting beauties from various races. However, he did not receive a response. He looked up at Ji Tianqing and was met with a pair of big eyes. "Whether you are interested or not, you have to come with me." Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly. Bai Long immediately put on a smile and nodded. "Yes, master. I will do as you say. I will dedicate my youth and passion to the great cause of saving the world." Ji Tianqing did not want to listen to him. He immediately used his trump card. Swoosh. He flipped his right palm. A golden light flashed in his palm, and a palm-sized black boat appeared. At first glance, this mysterious and cold boat that was as black as ink exuded an ancient aura. Upon closer inspection, one would realize that the boat was exquisitely made and shone with a dazzling golden light. Bai Long stared at the black boat and asked in disbelief, "Master, is this a newly made divine warship? Wow. As expected of your handiwork, this divine warship is so exquisite and meticulous. It's simply a work of art." Bai Long circled around Ji Tianqing and observed the divine warship excitedly. He rubbed his hands excitedly. Ji Tianqing explained with a smile, "This is not my masterpiece. The Golden Mountain King and the Earth Spirit Tribe's craftsmen spent a few years and 200 million origin stones to make it. Ah, is that so? Bai Long was shocked. He exclaimed in disbelief. Doesn't that mean 80% of the origin stones we mined in the past 10 years were used to make the divine warship? Of course. Ji Tianqing nodded and said with a smile, this origin stone divine warship is enough for us to travel across the universe. If you follow me, you will be the one to pilot the divine warship. Bai Long was so excited that his blood rushed to his head. He danced with joy. Yes. Master is wise, Master is mighty, Master is unparalleled in the world. Disciple will follow Master's orders and do his best to live up to your expectations. Seeing his reaction, Ji Tianqing put away the divine warship and instructed, go and make arrangements for the human race and the origin stones in the Earth's core. I will wait for you here. White Dragon complied and hurriedly went to arrange the specific matters. Watching him leave, Qianyu muttered in confusion, Old Ji, what's wrong with White Dragon? You weren't too happy just now. Why are you so excited in the blink of an eye? Ji Tianqing smiled and said, this kid likes to pilot battleships and travel through space. His love for all kinds of high-end warships had reached a fanatical level. I once asked him why he was so crazy about warships. He said that it was his dream since he was young. As long as he could pilot a battleship, he would have reached the peak of his life. Very quickly an hour passed. White Dragon arranged the follow-up matters and came to Ji Tianqing expectantly. Ji Tianqing did not say much and brought him out of the human race's divine palace. After entering the Sea of Lava, he took out the Tianqing battleship and handed it to White Dragon. White Dragon received it happily and released his divine power into the divine warship. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, the palm-sized black divine warship grew to the size of a mountain and was more than 2,000 feet long. The White Dragon couldn't wait to get into the divine warship. He looked around and rubbed his hands, looking very excited. After Ji Tianqing, Qianyu, Black Dragon, and Lan Kuan entered the divine warship, he calmed down and steered the divine warship through the Sea of Lava. Swoosh! The divine warship's array formation had just been activated, and it flew out from its static state. It turned into a black shadow and entered the depths of the Sea of Lava. Such terrifying speed shocked Qianyu, Black Dragon, and Lan Kuan. Even if they rushed at full speed, they were not even 1/5 of the divine warship's speed. The White Dragon, on the other hand, was so excited that its blood was boiling. It even whistled and hummed a weird song. Under normal circumstances, they would need a day to reach the black hole in the Sea of Lava. But White Dragon steered the Tianqing battleship and entered the black hole in 6 hours. Swoosh! After passing through the black hole, the battleship flew into the ancient temple. Under White Dragon's control, the battleship shrunk dozens of times before successfully entering the second level of the temple and entering the ancient teleportation array. In the next moment, the Tianqing battleship appeared in the vast void. Swoosh! The pitch-black void was eternally cold and still. In all directions, in the depths of the darkness, there were densely packed silver light spots. Those were thousands of stars shining brightly in the darkness. Below the Skyline battleship was a huge, barren planet, its surface covered with pale yellow sand. White Dragon sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing. Master, which direction are we going? Ji Tianqing thought for a moment and said, our target is the Purple Cloud Star. The 5 Elements world is southeast of the Purple Cloud Star zone, but the Purple Cloud Star is in the center. You will fly northwest. It will probably take a year to reach there. Bai Long hurriedly responded, all right, Master, you can rest at ease. Leave the rest to me. Then, White Dragon steered the Tianqing battleship, cutting through the void like a stream of light, and headed northwest. Ji Tianqing and the 3 divine beasts stayed in the battleship, each finding a room to cultivate in peace. In the void, time seemed to be frozen, and one could not feel the passage of time. The surrounding scenery seemed to be unchanged. White Dragon enjoyed the rush of driving the divine battleship, while Ji Tianqing and the 3 divine beasts were busy cultivating in seclusion, constantly improving their strength. God knows how long had passed. Maybe 3 months, maybe half a year. While Ji Tianqing was cultivating, White Dragon's voice transmission rang in his mind. Master? Master, wake up. I have something important to report. Ji Tianqing quickly woke up and ended his cultivation. White Dragon, why did you wake me up? Have we arrived at the purple cloud star? Ji Tianqing sat in the dark room, resting with his eyes closed, and asked White Dragon through voice transmission. White Dragon hesitated for a moment, then explained. No, we have only been flying for 4 months, and we are still very far from the purple cloud star. Master, this disciple interrupted your cultivation because this disciple discovered that a medium-sized fleet is attacking a planet. Ji Tianqing was stunned by the sudden news. He asked, what fleet? What star are they attacking? Did you see the situation clearly? White Dragon quickly explained. I flew around the star for half a day, and I roughly saw the situation. The fleet has more than 100 battleships, and the attacks they release are all dark red light beams. Also, the battleships look like the style of the Heaven Punishers. I suspect that it is the Heaven Punishers' fleet, and they are invading a mortal world. Then White Dragon said uneasily, Master, if you don't want to cause trouble, we will not meddle in other people's business. I will go around. Ji Tianqing sneered. Haha. If it is really the Heaven Punishers' fleet, then I am not meddling in other people's business. Today, I will help the people get rid of evil, and I will help Tianqing. Chapter 2548. Ji Tianqing's words made Bai Long's blood boil. Xiaoming, Xiaoming. He said without hesitation. Master, you are indeed a benevolent and righteous saint. You are the role model and leader of all martial artists. A lot of flattery came out fluently, and Ji Tianqing got goosebumps when he heard it. Cut the crap. Let's go and take a look. Okay. Bai Long replied. He steered the battleship and turned into a black shadow as he charged toward the star on the left. Soon Tianqing's battleship arrived at the void closest to the star. The star was not big. It was several times smaller than the Five Elements world. The surface of the star was covered by a faint silver divine light shield. One could vaguely see the shadow of a sky wolf. In the void not far from the divine light shield, there were hundreds of black battleships. They were spreading out and releasing dark red light beams to attack. Thousands of dark red pillars of light, as dense as raindrops, fiercely slammed into the divine light barrier, causing a deafening explosion. The violent shockwave, mixed with countless light fragments, burst out in all directions. After Ji Tianqing and Bai Long observed carefully, they confirmed that the fleet belonged to the Heaven-defying tribe. They did not know how long the Heaven-defying tribe had been attacking. A large gap had been created in the silver divine light shield. A group of experts was casting spells to block the attack of the dark red light beams at the gap that was dozens of miles long and 10 miles wide. Ji Tianqing looked over and saw that there were more than 30 people in that group of experts. Their bodies and appearances were different from humans. They looked more like demons. Their upper bodies were similar to humans. However, their heads were sharp wolf heads. Their lower bodies were wolf bodies with 4 hooves. They were covered with thick hair. They were thin and slender. Their eyes were dark green, and they shone with a cold light. The leader of the group was huge. He was at least 100 feet long. His hair was silver and he was a LV6 martial god. He exuded a powerful aura. Ji Tianqing immediately had an answer when he saw everyone's faces clearly. They are from the Sky Wolf tribe. This star should be the Sky Wolf star. Strictly speaking, the Sky Wolf tribe is not a human. They are a branch of the demon clan. Bai Long nodded. He asked through voice transmission, Master, it looks like the Sky Wolf tribe can't hold on for long. When should we save them? Should we wait until the heaven-defying tribe enters the Sky Wolf star before we save them? Ji Tianqing looked at the battlefield and observed the situation. He replied through voice transmission, No need. We are in a hurry. Let's end this quickly. Of course, there was another important reason for his decision. It would be best if they could kill the heaven-defying fleet. If the heaven-destroying fleet was allowed to charge into the Sirius star, it would definitely cause more casualties and even implicate a large number of innocent civilians. White Dragon charge. Ji Tianqing transmitted his voice to the White Dragon and gave the order. At the same time, he leaped out of the battleship and flew toward a nearby heaven-slaying battleship with the Heaven Barrier sword in hand. Swoosh! In the blink of an eye, Ji Tianqing traversed 500 miles, and arrived at the side of the heaven-defying tribe. Without hesitation, his body expanded to a height of 100 feet. He held the huge sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed it down. There was a martial god realm captain in the heaven-defying tribe. He was commanding hundreds of soldiers in black armor to control the formation to attack the Sky Wolf Star. When the sword of burial of heaven slashed down, the captain realized that something was wrong. His expression changed drastically. "Get out of the way!" he roared. He wanted to steer the heaven-defying sword of burial of heaven. However, this was an impossible task. Before the soldiers in black armor could react, the huge sword of burial of heaven slashed the heaven-defying tribe's battleship. Kaboom! With an earth-shattering explosion, the Middle Void God Realm battleship was cut in half by the sword of burial of heaven. Countless black metal fragments splattered in the void. Dozens of soldiers in black armor and the captain in silver armor flew out of the wreckage and fell into the void. The crowd immediately fell into chaos, letting out panicked roars and curses. Even though the captain shouted and ordered everyone not to panic and to form a battle formation to face the enemy, it was useless. Ji Tianqing charged over with his sword again. Like a tiger in a flock of sheep, he stirred up a storm of blood in the crowd. Swoosh! 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 Dazzling golden sword light bloomed. It was mixed with various thunderbolts and exploded in the crowd. Bam! 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 One by one, the soldiers in black armor were cut into pieces by the sword light. Their broken bodies scattered in the void and were sent flying into the distance by the shockwave. In just 100 breaths, 80% of the hundreds of soldiers in black armor were killed by Ji Tianqing. The remaining 20 black-armored warriors had long since fled in all directions, fleeing for their lives in panic. Ji Tianqing did not bother to chase after them. He charged toward the captain in silver armor with his sword in hand. The captain only had the strength of a LV3 martial god. He could not defend himself against Ji Tianqing's ferocious attacks. They had only exchanged 3 blows when Ji Tianqing's sword pierced through the captain's chest. The scales on the captain's chest were crushed and he died on the spot. After dealing with the battleship, Ji Tianqing charged toward another battleship with his sword in hand. At the same time, Bai Long drove the Tianqing battleship into the fleet. The 30,000-foot-long Tianqing battleship was like an ancient beast from the primordial age. It crashed into the heaven-defying tribe's battleships with destructive power. Kaboom! When the first loud explosion occurred, the Tianqing battleship crashed into the side of a heaven-defying tribe's battleship and broke it in half. Debris fell from the sky. More than 100 soldiers in black armor and a captain in silver armor fell from the sky. Before they could recover from the shock, a huge ice-blue fish as large as a mountain charged toward them fearlessly. Bang! 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 More than 20 soldiers in black armor were sent flying by the blue kraken. Their bodies shattered, and they died on the spot. The blue kraken opened its mouth and shot out endless ice-blue light beams into the crowd. Boom! 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 Instantly, more than 30 soldiers in black armor were blasted into pieces. The captain in silver armor was severely injured and bleeding profusely. Then, the blue kraken chased after the survivors and killed them one by one. Kaboom! When the second loud explosion occurred, the Tianqing battleship moved at its fastest speed and crashed into a heaven-defying tribe's battleship. The heaven-defying tribe's battleship was completely crushed by the Tianqing battleship. It was instantly turned into a pile of scrap metal and thousands of pieces of debris flew out. The Tianqing battleship was not damaged at all. It only shook a few times and returned to normal. Bai Long, who was piloting the battleship, laughed excitedly. His blood was boiling. Ha 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 ha. In front of my super battleship, the heaven-defying tribe's tattered little boats are like paper. They cannot withstand a single blow. He rubbed his hands excitedly and piloted the Tianqing battleship toward another heaven-defying tribe's battleship. At this moment, the heaven-defying tribe realized that something was wrong. A few battleships turned around and aimed their cannons at the Tianqing battleship. Seeing this, Bai Long was not worried. Instead, he laughed confidently and said, "Hee hee hee. I want to be targeted. I want to be pressured. Come at me together." Chapter 2549. White Dragon's arrogant wish was soon realized. The 6 heaven-defying battleships locked onto the Tianqing battleship, and shot out hundreds of dark red light pillars. Bang! 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 Dark red pillars of light that were as dense as raindrops landed on the Skyline battleship one after another, producing deafening booms. Suddenly, the Tianqing battleship was engulfed by the endless red light. However, the battleship only shook a few times and did not have any wounds or dents on its surface. On the other hand, the hundreds of dark red light pillars collapsed one after another, splashing out shards that blotted out the sky. This result shocked the heaven-defying battleships. The heaven-defying elites looked at each other and did not know what to do. White Dragon was getting more and more excited. He laughed in high spirits. Ha 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 ha. Too weak. You bunch of trash, are you trying to scratch my itch? As he spoke, he drove the Tianqing battleship at maximum speed. He turned into a black shadow and charged toward the few battleships in front of him. Boom, boom, boom. 3 loud bangs were heard. The 3 heaven-defying battleships that were lined up side by side were immediately pierced by the candied hawthorn. They were broken into pieces by the Tianqing battleship. Hundreds of black-armored warriors and the 3 silver-armored captains were blown away by the violent impact, falling into the void in a mess. The Tianqing battleship smashed 3 heaven-defying battleships in a row before the impact was offset, and its speed slowed down. White Dragon turned back and accelerated toward the chaotic crowd in an invincible and violent manner. Bang! 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 More than 100 black-armored soldiers could not dodge in time, and were smashed into pieces by the Tianqing battleship. They died instantly. Even the heaven-defying battleships who were brushed by the battleship were sent flying and vomiting blood. White Dragon laughed proudly and drove the Tianqing battleship into the heaven-defying battleship. He was extremely arrogant and domineering. At the front, White Dragon drove the battleship into the heaven-defying battleship. At the back, Ji Tianqing, Lan Kuan, Qianyu, and Black Dragon massacred the heaven-defying battleships in the void and killed many silver-armored captains. Soon, the heaven-conquering fleet fell into chaos, and it was difficult for them to take care of the front and rear. At the forefront of the fleet, there was a black battleship that was 2,000 feet long. Its body was exceptionally ferocious and domineering. This was the flagship of the fleet's leader, General Gudi. Originally, General Gudi's flagship was responsible for attacking the Sirius Star. The gap in the silver barrier was torn open by this ship. General Gudi was confident of victory. She thought that she could charge into the Sirius Star within 2 hours. He never would have thought that someone would come and cause trouble at such a crucial moment, causing the entire fleet to be in disarray. He flew into a rage and immediately ordered them to stop attacking the Sirius Star, and turn around to deal with the mysterious battleship that had suddenly intruded. Fire! Destroy it for me! General Gudi angrily gave the order, her body bursting with killing intent. The flagship immediately unleashed 200 crimson light beams, which blasted towards the Tianqing battleship thousands of miles away. Even though the Tianqing battleship was huge, like a moving mountain. However, its speed was extremely fast, like a phantom, and it appeared to be exceptionally nimble. Boom 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 boom. The 200 light beams tore through the void, but more than half of them were dodged by the Tianqing battleship. The remaining 60 light beams struck the Tianqing battleship, but they did not cause much damage. The Tianqing battleship was completely unharmed. There was not even a dent on its surface, and its defensive divine array was not broken. Seeing this, General Gudi's eyes widened in anger and disbelief. How is this possible? Where did that battleship come from? How can it block the attack of my flagship? Pass down my order. All battleships stop attacking the Sirius Star, and surround that mysterious battleship first. We must destroy it. As his order was passed down, hundreds of battleships adjusted their direction, and formed a circle with a radius of 20,000 miles, surrounding the Tianqing battleship. Endless dark red light beams poured down on the Tianqing battleship like a torrential rain. Inside the battleship, Bai Long put away his smug and joking expression. His expression became as calm as water, and a cold smile appeared on his lips. Haha. You want to use the encirclement tactic to destroy me first before attacking the Sirius Star? Then I'll play with you, a bunch of iron dolls. As he sneered, he formed a divine seal with both hands and continuously shot out dense golden light to control the battleship's divine array. Whoosh! the Tianqing battleship's speed reached the maximum. It turned into a black phantom and sped through the void. The phantom was erratic and flashed, sometimes moving forward, sometimes retreating, and the next moment, it turned around and swung its tail. As a result, it dodged most of the dark red light beams shot out by the hundreds of battleships. Even if a small portion of the light beams hit it, they could not break its defensive divine array, let alone stop it from moving. However, the heaven-conquering battleships immediately suffered. Bam, 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 bam. As a series of loud noises exploded, one battleship after another was hit by the Tianqing battleship. Some battleships were smashed into pieces and twisted out of shape. Some of the battleships were smashed into two halves. Some battleships were hit by the Tianqing battleship from the abdomen and directly split open. All in all, the Tianqing battleship was like an extremely agile fish that swam freely in the sea. Nothing could stop it. However, this fish was extremely sturdy and had infinite strength. If this fish was made of steel, then the dozens of heaven-conquering battleships were made of paper. This encirclement battle lasted for a few minutes before it was over. The Tianqing battleship was unscathed, but the heaven-conquering battleship was confused and suffered heavy losses. A total of more than 50 battleships were destroyed. Thousands of black-armored soldiers and dozens of silver-armored captains were not spared. They were quickly killed by Ji Tianqing and the three divine beasts. This result caused General Guti to break down on the spot. He could not believe that there was such a heaven-defying battleship in the Purple Cloud Galaxy. In his grief and anger, he could only suppress the humiliation and rage in his heart and give the order to retreat. The 40 battleships that were lucky enough to survive turned around and flew into the depths of the void, fleeing in panic. However, General Guti soon discovered that it was wishful thinking for the fleet to successfully retreat. The more than 30 powerhouses guarding the Sirius Star were in high spirits. They took the initiative to rush into the void and chase after the heaven-conquering battleship. The Tianqing battleship, Ji Tianqing, and the three divine beasts did not give up. They destroyed one heaven-conquering battleship after another along the way. The two sides chased each other in the void for 100,000 miles. More than 30 of the 40 battleships that were lucky enough to survive were destroyed. The black-armored soldiers and captains were also killed by Ji Tianqing and the powerhouses of the Sirius Star tribe. General Guti knew that the situation was hopeless. In his fury, he gave up on escaping. He personally steered his battleship and turned around to charge toward the Tianqing battleship. Even if he died, he would drag the other party down with him. Boom! Crack! The two giants did not avoid each other. They collided head-on with a loud explosion that shook the void. Chapter 2550. A destructive shockwave spread through the void. General Guti's flagship was smashed into pieces, sending thousands of pieces flying everywhere. The wreckage of countless battleships flew into the void with a terrifying force. A huge storm was born, sweeping through tens of thousands of miles. The 200 black-armored warriors in the warship were instantly smashed to pieces and died. General Guti and the three captains were also severely injured. They were wrapped in the wreckage of the warship and scattered in the void. Before the three captains could react, Lan Kuan, Qianyu, and Black Dragon pounced forward and killed them. General Guti endured his injuries and flew out of the wreckage, trying to escape into the depths of the void. However, Ji Tianqing caught up to him and held him back. Soon, a few Sirius elites rushed over and joined forces to attack General Guti. After more than 10 moves, General Guti died under Ji Tianqing's sword. Not only was his body destroyed, but even his divine soul was shattered. The battle ended, and everyone in the heaven-conquering fleet was killed. Ji Tianqing put away the sword of burial of heaven, and was about to turn and leave. At this moment, the huge silver-white Sirius elite led many Sirius elites and flew in front of Ji Tianqing. "Brave warrior, please wait." The leader of the Sirius elites looked at Ji Tianqing with a gentle gaze. He crossed his arms and covered his shoulders as he bowed to Ji Tianqing. The 20 or so Sirius experts behind him also bowed and paid their respects to Ji Tianqing. Even though everyone's injuries were very miserable, their bodies were covered in blood, and many of their bodies were crippled. However, everyone's expression and eyes were filled with the joy of surviving a calamity, as well as deep gratitude. However, they spoke in the Sirius language. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment before he understood what they meant. He turned to look at the leader of the Sirius elites and asked unhurriedly in the somewhat unfamiliar Sirius language, "Is there anything else?" Seeing that he could speak the language of the Sirius clan, many of the Sirius clan's experts were pleasantly surprised, and their attitude towards him became even more intimate. The leader of the Celestial Wolf tribe nodded at Ji Tianqing and said with a smile, "Warrior, I am the Celestial Lord of the Celestial Wolf Star. My people call me the Celestial Wolf God. What I am ashamed of is that as the guardian of the Sirius Star, I was unable to stop the invasion of the Heaven Punishers and caused countless casualties among my people. Fortunately, you helped and destroyed the Heaven Attacking Fleet and General Guti. Otherwise, the Sirius Star would have fallen today. I and the 28 Constellation Guards will also perish under the bombardment of the Heaven-destroying fleet. You have saved me and the Sirius Star. Such kindness is higher than the sky and deeper than the sea. I sincerely invite you to the Sirius Star as a guest to express our gratitude." After hearing this, Ji Tianqing learned that the strongest and most imposing expert was known as the Heavenly Wolf God. The Celestial Wolf tribe experts behind him, who were at the first and second level of the Martial God realm, were known as the 28 Constellation Guards. Ji Tianqing roughly understood that the 28 Constellation Guards were most likely there to assist the Heavenly Wolf God and protect the Sirius Star. He shook his head and said calmly, "Heavenly Wolf God, you don't have to be so polite. I was just passing by and saw that the Heaven Attacking Star was attacking the Sirius Star. In fact, I also have a blood feud with the Heaven Attacking Star. Even if the Heaven Attacking Star did not attack the Sirius Star, as long as I encountered them, they would definitely die. There's no need to thank me. I still have matters to attend to." When they heard Ji Tianqing's words, the Heavenly Wolf God and the Constellation Guards felt even more cordial toward him. They felt as if they shared a common enemy. Therefore, the Heavenly Wolf God was even more unwilling to let Ji Tianqing leave. "Warrior, since you are also at odds with the Heaven Attacking Star, we are in the same boat. We should form an alliance and help each other. Now the Heaven Attacking Star has invaded the Purple Cloud Star and is vainly trying to control the entire star field. They are wantonly attacking the various major worlds. Warrior, we sincerely beg you to stay for a few days and rest on the Sirius Star." Then the Heavenly Wolf God and the 28 Constellation Guards crossed their arms and covered their shoulders. They bowed to Ji Tianqing and refused to get up. Ji Tianqing knew that this was one of the highest forms of courtesy the Heavenly Wolf tribe had. Since the other party was so sincere, he couldn't refuse. Moreover, the Heavenly Wolf God's words reminded him of something. Therefore, after some consideration, he nodded and agreed. "All right, since you are so sincere in your invitation, I cannot refuse your kind intentions." The Heavenly Wolf God and the Constellation Guards were overjoyed and quickly got up. "Warrior, please gather your companions. Let's enter the Sirius Star together." The Heavenly Wolf God pointed at the Tianqing battleship and the 3 divine beasts that were still cleaning up the battlefield in the distance. Ji Tianqing nodded and used his divine soul to summon the White Dragon and the 3 divine beasts. The 3 divine beasts hurriedly returned to the battleship. The White Dragon steered the Tianqing battleship toward Ji Tianqing. Seizing this opportunity, the Heavenly Wolf God asked Ji Tianqing, "Warrior, may I know your title?" Ji Tianqing calmly replied, "Tianqing." The Heavenly Wolf God bowed again and said respectfully, "Greetings, true God Tianqing." The 28 Constellation Guards also bowed and greeted him in unison. Clearly, no one could tell Ji Tianqing's cultivation level. After witnessing his powerful techniques, they all believed that he was a true God expert. After all, only a true God expert could split the heaven-punishing battleship in half with a sword, kill the captain of the heaven-punishing battleship in an instant, and easily kill General Guti. Ji Tianqing only nodded and did not explain anything. In any case, although he was a peak martial god, his true combat strength was comparable to a third-level true god expert. There was nothing wrong with the Heavenly Wolf God and the others calling him a true god. Before long, the Tianqing battleship flew in front of everyone. Ji Tianqing turned and stepped into the battleship. The Heavenly Wolf God and the 28 Constellation Guards led the way and flew toward the Sirius Star. Swoosh! Everyone flew in front of the silver light barrier and passed through the huge gap, entering the Sirius star. The White Dragon steered the Tianqing battleship and stopped in front of the gap. He was a little hesitant and asked Ji Tianqing via voice transmission, "Master, didn't you say that we were in a hurry? Why are we going to the Sirius star as a guest?" Ji Tianqing said with a playful smile, "The Heavenly Wolf God sincerely invited me. It's hard to refuse." The White Dragon pursed his lips and chuckled. "Master, I know you too well. I'm afraid that's not the reason, right?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked, "Oh? Then tell me, what's the real reason?" The White Dragon answered without hesitation, "In my opinion, you saved the Sirius star. The Heavenly Wolf God is grateful to you and will definitely think of a way to repay you. You don't care about resources and treasures, but you're worried about the Five Elements world. Coincidentally, the Sirius star is not far from the Five Elements world. If the Five Elements world is in danger, the Sirius star can help. You're really smart." Ji Tianqing's tone was indifferent as he said, "You know too much." Chapter 2551. After the battleship entered the Sirius star, it followed the Sirius god and the others through the sky. Follow_dream. A few hours later, the Sirius god and the others flew into a sea of clouds. This vast sea of clouds spanned 1,000,000 miles. It was as solid and flat as a continent. Neither the wind nor the scorching sun could move the sea of clouds. In the depths of the sea of clouds, there was a dazzling palace complex. It was especially sacred and majestic. Tianqing's battleship followed the Sirius god and the others and landed outside the sacred palace. Then the three divine beasts stayed in the battleship to rest. Ji Tianqing put away the battleship and stepped into the temple with the White Dragon. This was the most sacred place of the Sirius star. It was called the Sirius Temple. The Sirius god and the 28 lunar mansion guards lived here all year round to protect the entire star. After entering the temple, the Sirius god dismissed the 28 lunar mansion guards and told them to retreat to recuperate. He endured his heavy injuries and received Ji Tianqing and the White Dragon. Both parties took their seats in the majestic hall. Immediately, four beautiful and wild Sirius maids came to serve Ji Tianqing and the White Dragon. Ji Tianqing was not interested in this. He waved his hand to signal the two maids to retreat and serve the White Dragon. The four beautiful maids surrounded the White Dragon. The White Dragon's blood was boiling and his heart was itching. However, he pretended to be serious and kept a straight face, sitting upright and still. He waved his hand expressionlessly and dismissed the four maids. Ji Tianqing was amused when he saw this. He could not help but ask, "Isn't this what you want? How can you not be moved?" The White Dragon replied seriously, "Master, how can you think like that? Am I that kind of person? I am learning your noble character. I will not be moved by beauty." Ji Tianqing could not be bothered to listen to his nonsense. He started chatting with the Sirius god. "Sirius god, when did the Heaven Destroyers start invading the Sirius star? I saw that the Heaven Destroyers had just torn open the Sirius star's defensive barrier. They had not entered the Sirius star yet." The Sirius god shook his head angrily and explained, "True God Tianqing, you might not know this, but the Heaven Destroyers are very cunning. As early as 3 years ago, a small fleet of heaven-destroying fleets had used secret techniques and special divine artifacts to break through the defensive shield of the Sirius star. There were more than 30 battleships in that fleet. They secretly invaded a continent and took control of the 4 divine kingdoms. A year ago, under the control of the Heaven Punisher race, the 4 divine kingdoms of that continent madly attacked another continent and slaughtered billions of martial practitioners and citizens. The Sirius god did not hide the truth and told Ji the Sirius god. He explained the entire story. After listening to his explanation, Ji Tianqing finally understood the whole story. It turned out that the Sirius star was different from the 5 elements world. It had 4 continents, more than a dozen divine kingdoms, and more than 30 billion living beings. After the Heaven Punishers secretly took control of one continent, they crazily attacked another. Not long after, the Sirius god realized something was wrong and led the 28 lunar mansion guards to counterattack. They could not kill the Sirius race controlled by the Heaven Destroyers. After all, they were innocent. The Sirius God and the 28 lunar mansion guards could only search for the heaven destroyers and kill them one by one, destroying one heaven destroyer after another. But because of this, the Sirius God's hands were tied and he could not act decisively. The war lasted for half a year, causing the 2 continents to be destroyed. More than 10 billion warriors and civilians died. The Sirius God blamed himself for this. He called himself the sinner of the Sirius star and the disgrace of the Sirius gods. Even now, he could not let it go. After the war ended, he thought the Sirius star was finally at peace. But soon he realized he was wrong. The greedy and overbearing heaven destroyers would not let the Sirius star go. Half a year ago, General Guti led a medium-sized heaven destroyer fleet to attack the Sirius star. This time, there were more battleships and heaven destroyers. The Sirius star was caught off guard and could not resist. The Sirius God used all his means and gathered all the warriors of the Sirius star to resist the heaven destroyer fleet. In half a year, dozens of martial gods of the Sirius star had died. Of the original 49 constellation guards, only 28 were left. As for the martial sage realm warriors of the Sirius race, hundreds of them had died. The Sirius star was at the end of its rope and had been forced into a corner. The battle in the starry sky had been the final battle. If Ji Tianqing had not appeared, the Sirius star would have been defeated. The Sirius God and the 28 lunar mansion guards would have died. As for the 30 billion people on the Sirius star, their fates were self-evident. That was why the Sirius God was so grateful to Ji Tianqing and saw him as the savior of the Sirius star. Ji Tianqing said angrily, "Sirius God, I can understand how you feel. A few years ago, the 5 elements realm that I was in also suffered a similar calamity. An entire continent, 3 kingdoms, and tens of billions of people were massacred by the heaven destroyer fleet. Corpse puppets were everywhere and blood flowed like a sea. However, no matter how powerful the heaven destroyer fleet is, we will not surrender. We did our best and paid a huge price and sacrificed a lot to destroy the heaven destroyer fleet and usher in a short period of peace." The Sirius God resonated strongly with him. However, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. He blamed himself and said, "True God Tianqing, the billions of people in the 5 elements realm are lucky to be under your protection. Unlike me, who was weak and could not even protect the people of the Sirius star, and let them suffer so much." Ji Tianqing shook his head and said, "Sirius God, you don't have to blame yourself. You must pull yourself together. As long as the heaven destroyer fleet is not destroyed, the war will not truly end. Even if we win today, an even more powerful heaven destroyer fleet will invade the Sirius star soon." The Sirius God nodded and said, "True God Tianqing, I understand what you are saying. I have also prepared myself mentally. Now that the Sirius star is at the end of its rope, when that day comes, I will lead the 28 constellation guards and perish together with the heaven destroyer fleet." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "You don't have to be so pessimistic. Things will take a turn for the better. However, the prerequisite is that we are not afraid of sacrificing ourselves and have the courage to fight to the death with the heaven destroyer fleet. There is something I have to tell you. The person who took over the purple cloud star and tried to control the entire star field was the heaven destroyer fleet's Fleet Marshal Nan. 5 years ago, Fleet Marshal Nan personally led a fleet to invade the 5 elements realm, but we stopped him. The entire fleet was destroyed, and only Fleet Marshal Nan was left. He was severely injured and fled back to the purple cloud star. This time, I have come to the purple cloud star to kill Fleet Marshal Nan with my own hands. As long as I kill him, the main culprit, the crisis in the purple cloud star field will be resolved, and we will have a long period of peace." The heavenly wolf god was shocked to the extreme when he heard the news. He stood up with a bang. His eyes widened as he roared in disbelief. "True God Tianqing, is what you said true?" Chapter 2552. The heavenly wolf god could not believe it. Marshal Nan, who had conquered Purple Cloud Planet, had personally led a fleet to invade the 5 elements world, but he had been seriously injured and had to flee? Moreover, True God Tianqing wanted to take the initiative to go to Purple Cloud Planet to seek revenge on Marshal Nan? Wasn't this too exaggerated? The heavenly wolf god was stunned for a long time before he recovered from his shock. He muttered with a face full of shame. A mere General Gutty was able to occupy the Sirius star with a medium-sized fleet. I and the 28 lunar mansion guards almost died in the galaxy. True God Tianqing not only destroyed Marshal Nan's fleet, but he also severely injured him. Now he even wants to go to Purple Cloud Planet to seek revenge. Such courage and boldness really make me ashamed. I don't have the face to see anyone. The Heavenly Wolf God had misunderstood this matter, and gave all the credit to Ji Tianqing. However, Ji Tianqing did not intend to explain. The process was very complicated and could not be explained in a few words. He comforted the Heavenly Wolf God. Heavenly Wolf God, leave the matter of killing Marshal Jinan to me. What you need to do is to heal your injuries as soon as possible and protect Sirius Planet. Also, I will leave 5 Elements World with my disciples and divine beasts to seek revenge on Purple Cloud Planet. Now that 5 Elements World's defenses are weak, if the heaven-punishing fleet invades again, it will be difficult to resist. Before he could finish, the Heavenly Wolf God understood what he meant and hurriedly nodded. True God Tianqing, please don't worry. Our lives were saved by you. Once the 5 Elements World is invaded by the heaven-punishing race, you only need to send a message, and we will go to help. After all, we are all victims of the heaven-punishing race's invasion. It is reasonable for us to work together and help each other. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, It's good that you understand. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave. You should go and heal your injuries as soon as possible. Seeing that he was about to leave, the Heavenly Wolf God hurriedly stood up and reached out to stop him. True God Tianqing, you can't leave now. I have already ordered the guards to prepare carefully. Tomorrow, we will hold the ancestral worship hall on the Heavenly Wolf platform. I would like to use the most sacred ceremony to express my gratitude to you. Furthermore, I will report this great news to the Wolf God ancestor. Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, Is there a need to be so grand? How long will it take? The Sirius God hurriedly explained, This matter concerns the survival of the Sirius star. So of course we have to hold the grandest ceremony. Don't worry, the ceremony will be completed in a day. It won't delay your revenge. Moreover, after the Wolf God ancestor hears the good news, he will definitely send down the Light of God as a gift to thank you for your help. Light of God. Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and thought to himself, Isn't the ancestor of the Sirius star a little too weak? He's actually just a heavenly god? Bai Long, on the other hand, could tell that something was amiss. Master, although you don't think much of the Sirius ancestor's gift, we need it right now. Don't forget that the 5 Elements World is sealed, and the laws of heaven and earth are unable to descend, causing you to be unable to break through to the true God realm. But this is the Sirius star, a place shrouded by the heavenly Tao. Even if the laws of heaven and earth don't descend, you can still break through to the true God realm if you can refine the light of God. Ji Tianqing naturally understood this point. He nodded slightly and said, What you said makes sense. Then Master will stay for one more day, and see the situation first. After being in seclusion in the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda for so long, he had not been able to break through to the true God realm. He was very regretful and anxious. Now that the opportunity was in front of him, it would be great if he could take the opportunity to break through to the true God realm. At least, after he reached the true God realm, he would be invincible in the Purple Firmament Star Zone. After sneaking into the Purple Firmament Star, the chances of killing Marshal Zhang Nan with his own hands would also be greater. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing and Bai Long bid farewell and left the temple. Under the guidance of the guards, the two entered the side hall to rest for a while. At the same time, 5 Elements World, inside the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Pagoda, Jiku ended his seclusion cultivation and slowly stopped, opening his eyes. I still can't sense the laws of heaven and earth. Breaking through to the true God realm is still far away. Maybe I should cultivate the 4 divine flames to the extreme, and have a chance to break through to the true God realm? Or maybe I should leave the divine pagoda like Big Brother Tianqing and cultivate in the ruins of God for a few months. She muttered to herself, getting up and flying toward the distorted space-time in front of her. I'll go ask Big Brother Tianqing. Maybe he can help me find the reason. Jiku flew through the distorted space-time at lightning speed, and arrived at the place where Ji Tianqing was cultivating in seclusion. However, the place was empty. There was no trace of Ji Tianqing at all. There was only a jade slip floating in the air, shining brightly. Jiku frowned in confusion and reached out to pick up the jade slip. His divine sense entered it, and Ji Tianqing's voice immediately sounded in his mind. Yao Yao Kuku, when you see this letter, I will have already left the five elements world. The sudden news stunned Jiku on the spot, and his expression changed on the spot. She suppressed her anxiety and worry. After listening to the news in the jade slip, she took the jade slip and flew toward the place where Yin Yao was cultivating in seclusion. Swoosh! Not long after, she arrived at the place where Yin Yao was cultivating in seclusion. Yin Yao was sitting on the white jade bed. Her hands were forming a seal, and she placed them on her knees. Her eyes were closed as she cultivated. Chunchen and Yaya imitated her and sat beside her, meditating and cultivating. The two children had already grown to 3 feet tall. They looked very much like Yin Yao and Ji Tianqing. Their skin was sparkling and translucent, and their temperament was noble and elegant. Jiku did not disturb the two children. He used telepathy to wake Yin Yao up. Eldest senior sister, wake up. I have something to tell you. Yin Yao gradually woke up. She ended her cultivation and opened her eyes. Seeing Jiku's anxious face, she asked worriedly, Kuku, what happened? Don't panic. Tell me slowly. Jiku passed the jade slip to her and said telepathically, Eldest senior sister, this is the letter that big brother Tianqing left behind. He has already left the five elements world. What? Yin Yao was shocked. Her eyes were filled with worry. Why? Why did Tianqing leave without saying goodbye? Why did he leave the five elements world alone? Jiku explained. Big brother Tianqing said that as long as the heaven punishers are not destroyed, the five elements world will never be truly peaceful. We can hide for now, but we can't hide from Marshal Jinnan's revenge. Instead of waiting for death, we should take the initiative to attack. That's why he left behind this letter, and left without saying goodbye. He left the five elements world with Qianyu, Black Dragon and White Dragon. He said that the Golden Mountain King had already built an energy stone battleship for him. It's enough for him to roam unhindered. He wants to go to Purple Cloud Planet to kill Marshal Jinnan, and stall the Heaven Punishers' army. Only then will the Heaven Punishers have no time to invade the five elements world. After hearing this, Yin Yao became even more worried. She smiled bitterly and said, Although he never told me, I already knew that he had this idea. I just didn't expect him to go alone, and not let us fight with him. He really put in a lot of effort to protect us and the two children. He would rather take all the risks himself. Sigh. Chapter 2553. Yin Yao could only sigh at Ji Tianqing's decision. She was the person who understood Ji Tianqing the most, so she naturally understood Ji Tianqing's intentions. Because of this, her heart was filled with warmth and gratitude despite her worries. Jiku was still not at ease and anxiously asked, Senior sister, both of us have witnessed Marshal Nan's strength. He's at least at the 5th or 6th level of the true God realm. Furthermore, Violet Cloud Planet is Marshal Nan's base, and there are countless powerhouses from the Heaven Punishers stationed there. Big brother Tianqing only brought the White Dragon, Qianyu, and the Black Dragon. If he rashly barges into Violet Cloud Planet, it will definitely be extremely dangerous. Yin Yao nodded. Yes, I know what you're saying, and I'm also very worried. However, Tianqing's personality is like this. Once he makes a decision, he won't change it easily. Jiku thought for a moment and then suggested, Senior sister, you have to take care of Chunchen and Yaya, so you should stay here. I'm worried about big brother Tianqing. I want to go find him and enter Violet Cloud Planet with him to help him deal with Marshal Nan. Yin Yao hurriedly shook her head and tried to persuade her. Kuku, Tianqing is not only worried about me and the two children, but he's also very worried about you. The reason he doesn't want to bring you along is because he doesn't want you to be in danger. He's protecting you. If you go alone, won't he be even more worried? Moreover, Tianqing has a divine warship made from origin stones that can traverse the universe. You don't have a warship, so how will you smoothly reach Violet Cloud Planet? Jiku was suddenly speechless. He was anxious, but he had no good plan. Yin Yao stood up and patted her shoulder, comforting her. All right, Cuckoo. After experiencing so many storms and dangers, don't you understand Tianqing? Since he's made such a decision, he must have his reasons and considerations. We should support and trust him. He's never been a reckless person, so he must have his ways. What we need to do is protect Shenwu continent and the Five Elements realm. We can't distract him. After Yin Yao's persuasion, Jiku gradually dismissed the idea of going to Zixiao planet. She prayed silently in her heart that Ji Tianqing would be safe and successful. A day passed quickly. Early the next morning, the Heavenly Wolf celestial race sent a personal guard to invite Ji Tianqing and the White Dragon over. The two of them finished their meditation and walked out of the side chamber. In the square outside the temple, there were over 1,000 celestial wolf clan guards in golden armor, forming a grand ceremonial procession. The Heavenly Wolf God sat upright in his enormous divine chariot, dressed in luxurious robes. Beside him was an empty divine chariot. The guard led Ji Tianqing and the White Dragon onto the sacred chariot. Then the Heavenly Wolf deity ordered the honor guard to set out and rush to the Heavenly Wolf terrace in the depths of the Sea of Clouds. The guard of honor flew in the Sea of Clouds for 2 hours. Divine light flickered along the way, and their aura was majestic and majestic. The Heavenly Wolf Arena was an enormous stone platform that stood towering in the Sea of Clouds, and it was 30,000 meters tall. The stone platform was silvery white in color, and it was made from precious starstones that emitted a dense silver light. Ji Tianqing understood that the Heavenly Wolf God was a branch of the Yao clan that worshipped the stars and used the lunar star as their totem. Over the past tens of thousands of years, the Heavenly Wolf clan had developed and expanded, and they had a deep foundation. Countless gods had appeared in the clan, and they had all ascended to the higher realms. In fact, whenever something major happened, the Heavenly Wolf clan would hold a ceremony to worship their ancestors, and they would be able to contact their ancestors in the higher realms. Of course, this kind of connection was limited to simple information exchanges and the descent of divine light. Other than that, they were restricted by the Heavenly Tao's rules and could not communicate with each other. When the Guard of Honor arrived at the Heavenly Wolf Arena, Ji Tianqing saw that the stone platform, which had a radius of 50 kilometers, had already been set up. Tens of thousands of guards stood around the stone platform, and their postures were respectful and pious. In the center of the stone platform, a mysterious array diagram was carved into the ground, and there were 49 sacrificial items placed there. Hundreds of priests in strange attire were surrounding the array and the sacrificial items. They were dancing a strange dance and chanting ancient incantations. The Guard of Honor stopped in the Sea of Clouds. The Heavenly Wolf God walked down from the divine carriage and led Ji Tianqing and the White Dragon onto the Heavenly Wolf Arena. The Heavenly Wolf God and Ji Tianqing walked side by side. The White Dragon walked to the side of the priests, but he was stopped by a few constellation guards. The 28 constellation guards were guarding the outer circle of the sacrificial items, and they did not dare to step into the array diagram. Although the White Dragon was depressed, he understood that this was the Heavenly Wolf clan's ceremony, and it was very sacred and solemn. Therefore, he stayed outside the array diagram and watched as Ji Tianqing and the Heavenly Wolf God walked into the array diagram. After a while, the two of them stood in the middle of the array diagram. The Heavenly Wolf God put his palms together, closed his eyes, and silently chanted a few words. Then he waved his hand and shot out a few rays of silver light into the array diagram. Swoosh! In an instant, the huge array diagram, which had a radius of 10 kilometers, lit up with billions of rays of silver light. The dense silver light danced and weaved in the sky, forming thousands of mysterious diagrams that shot into the sky. The hundreds of priests around the array diagram danced even more vigorously and devoutly chanted incantations. Tens of thousands of Heavenly Wolf clan guards, including the 28 constellation guards, knelt down in unison and prostrated themselves on the ground, chanting an ancient and tedious language. The White Dragon stood on the spot in a daze, appearing like a crane among chickens. However, he did not feel awkward. He calmly looked at the sky and observed the mysterious diagrams. He could sense that the thousands of mysterious diagrams had shot into the sky, producing a powerful invisible force that connected to the heavens. At the same time, the heavenly wolf god also prostrated himself on the ground, chanting incantations. Ji Tianxing stood to the side, silently watching all of this. He felt the invisible force converging with the heavens. He sighed inwardly. A tiny heavenly wolf star can survive for tens of thousands of years without being destroyed. An ancestor ascended to the upper realm and became a true god. This gave the heavenly wolf star something to rely on, and was unknowingly protected. I wonder how the heavenly wolf ancestor will react to the news of the Heaven Punisher's invasion after this ceremony? Unknowingly, 2 hours passed. The thousands of mysterious diagrams in the sky gradually thinned out, leaving behind only endless silver light dancing in the sky. The heavenly wolf god, who was prostrating himself on the ground, slowly got up and bowed 3 times toward the heavens. Then he said, "True God Tianxing, the ancestor has heard the voices of his descendants and heard the news. The ancestor is furious and has ordered us to do our best to protect the heavenly wolf star and not bring shame to the ancestor's name. At the same time, the ancestor is very grateful for your help and has decided to send down divine light to reward you." Ji Tianxing nodded and waited calmly. When the heavenly wolf god saw that he was unmoved, he felt slightly awkward. He reminded him softly, "True God Tianxing, the ancestor is about to send down divine light to reward you. You have to bow to the ancestor like I did." Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked, "Like you did just now, prostrating yourself on the ground and bowing 3 times?" The heavenly wolf god did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. He nodded and said, "Yes." Ji Tianxing's lips curled into a meaningful smile. He asked, "Are you sure?" Chapter 2554. Ji Tianxing's words stunned the heavenly wolf deity. His expression became a little strange as he thought to himself, "What does true God Tianxing mean by this? Is he unwilling? That's right, with his true god-level strength, he can dominate the purple firmament star zone without fear of anyone. However, the progenitor is an upper realm deity, an almighty who looks down on all 3,000 worlds. For true God Tianxing to catch the progenitor's eye and be rewarded by him, that's a blessing that billions of powerhouses would be envious of." Thinking of this, the heavenly wolf deity transmitted his voice to Ji Tianxing. "True God Tianxing, I understand your concerns. Our races and beliefs are different, so it might be difficult for you to kneel to my progenitor. However, my progenitor is an upper realm deity, a true almighty. For you to receive the progenitor's favor and be rewarded by the divine light is an incomparably glorious and enviable matter. Even I was fortunate enough to receive the divine light's baptism once when I succeeded the heavenly wolf deity." The heavenly wolf deity was very anxious, not wanting Ji Tianxing to miss out on such a great opportunity. However, he could not be too hasty, so he had to pay attention to the way he spoke to avoid offending Ji Tianxing. After all, Ji Tianxing was the great hero who saved the heavenly wolf star. Ji Tianxing could also see that the heavenly wolf deity was in a difficult position, so he smiled and said, "Fine, since you've requested it, I'll kowtow to him 3 times. After saying that, he put his palms together and bowed toward the sky. Although he did not kneel down, he did not kneel down. He only bowed. However, the billions of starlight in the sky suddenly became scattered and fluttered like snowflakes. The huge formation map also trembled, and the star patterns on the ground became bright and dim as the starlight burst out. The sudden change stunned the heavenly wolf deity, the 28 constellation guards, and the thousands of guards. They all looked stunned. At this moment, Ji Tianxing bowed again and bowed a second time. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. The billions of starlight in the sky suddenly shattered, turning into silver light spots and dissipating. Even the heavenly wolf arena beneath everyone's feet started to shake. Tens of thousands of guards were swayed left and right, and the originally grand and orderly formation suddenly became extremely messy. The heavenly wolf god and the 28 lunar mansions came back to their senses. Their expressions changed drastically as they looked up at the sky in confusion. What happened? The illumination light has shattered. Even the grand formation has become chaotic and is about to collapse. Everyone look. There's a crack in the formation. Heavens, what the hell is going on? This is the most sacred sacrificial ceremony of our race. There has never been an accident before. Everyone was inexplicably surprised, but at a loss of what to do. They whispered to each other. The heavenly wolf god finally realized something, and he looked at Ji Tianxing in shock. True God Tianxing. This you? He wanted to question Ji Tianxing, but he didn't know what to say. At the same time, Ji Tianxing bowed again, bowing for the third time. Crack. The violently shaking heavenly wolf arena finally couldn't withstand the terrifying force from the heavens, and dozens of cracks appeared on it. The formation diagram was shattered, and many of the offerings were reduced to ashes. Hundreds of priests fell to the ground, their faces ashen as they knelt on the ground and kowtowed incessantly. The 28 lunar mansions and tens of thousands of guards also knelt on the ground, kowtowing to the heavens. Everyone thought that the heavenly wolf ancestor had been angered and had decided to punish them. This was because everyone was uneasy and could only kowtow incessantly, hoping to appease the ancestor's anger. Only the white dragon stood there calmly with a playful smile on his face. He muttered in his heart, "Ha ha ha. How can a mere monarch god receive such a grand bow from master? I'm afraid that the divine monarch would be so scared that he's unable to sit still, right?" After bowing, Ji Tianxing lowered his hands and turned to look at the heavenly wolf god. The heavenly wolf god suppressed his shock and hurriedly asked, "True God Tianxing, what did you do? Why did you destroy my tribe's sacrificial ceremony?" He couldn't understand why Ji Tianxing would do such a thing. Ji Tianxing had no enmity with the heavenly wolf tribe, only a favor. Ji Tianxing pointed to the heavens and said with a faint smile, "I didn't want to destroy your ceremony. You'll have to ask your ancestor about this." The heavenly wolf god was at a loss for words, not knowing how to respond. He had to admit that Ji Tianxing hadn't done anything other than kowtow 3 times. Could it be that true God Tianxing's arrogance and lack of sincerity angered the ancestor? This thought flashed through the heavenly wolf god's mind. Should he vent his anger on Ji Tianxing? Or even attack Ji Tianxing to appease the ancestor's anger? That couldn't be right. Who would treat their savior like that? The heavenly wolf tribe didn't have such an ungrateful mindset. Just as the heavenly wolf god was hesitating, the heavens lit up with resplendent starlight. Swoosh! Endless starry divine light, containing a divine and domineering power, poured down like a flood. When the divine light reached the sky above the heavenly wolf arena, it gathered into a huge vortex and surrounded Ji Tianxing. Endless divine light poured into his body like flowing water, cleansing his divine body and divine soul, rapidly increasing his constitution and soul power. Ji Tianxing stood on the stage, spreading his arms and looking up at the heavens, calmly accepting the divine light's baptism. The heavenly wolf god, the 28 lunar mansion guards, and the tens of thousands of guards were all dumbfounded. Everyone was dumbfounded, their mouths agape in shock. Heavens! The divine light has descended. Didn't true God Tianxing anger the ancestor? Why would the ancestor send down the light of God? Everyone look, the light of God is so magnificent. It's 100 times brighter than before. If real God Tianheng angered the primogenitor, why would the primogenitor show him such favor and send down such terrifying divine light? Who can tell me what's going on? All the heavenly wolf tribe elites felt like their minds had short-circuited, and their brains were not enough. The scene in front of them was too mysterious, and they could not understand it at all. The divine light that descended from the heavens was so powerful that it exceeded everyone's imagination. Compared to the divine light that the heavenly wolf god had received previously, this divine light was 100 times stronger. As a result, the entire heavenly wolf arena was enveloped by the silver light. The 28 lunar mansion guards and the hundreds of priests outside the array diagram were all tainted by a trace of the divine light that seeped out. Everyone immediately felt refreshed. Their constitution and divine souls were cleansed and refined, and they received great benefits. Even the tens of thousands of guards around the heavenly wolf arena were tainted by the light of God, their strength greatly increasing. As for the heavenly wolf god, who was standing beside Ji Tianxing in the center of the array diagram, he also received the rich light of God. He hurriedly prostrated himself on the ground and happily absorbed the light of God, silently increasing his strength. The white dragon also benefited from this and happily absorbed the divine light to strengthen his foundation of the divine Tao. Such a scene could be said to be a blessing in disguise. Chapter 2555. The Heavenly Wolf Arena under the divine light was sacred and glorious. Ji Tianqing was in the divine light vortex, like a bottomless pit, crazily devouring the light of God. The surging heavenly God power seemed to be cleansing his body and divine soul. His divine body continued to strengthen and grow rapidly, growing toward the true God realm. The same was true for his soul, growing at an incredible speed. The martial God realm was also known as the virtual God realm. Martial artists of this realm had just stepped into the divine path, and had yet to condense a true divine body and control the laws of heaven and earth. What was a god? Every word and action was a law. Every move could control everything in the world, triggering the moon and the stars. This was a true god. If an ordinary martial god wanted to break through to the true God realm, he needed to trigger the laws of heaven and earth. Only by tempering the divine body and soul with the power of laws, eliminating the false and retaining the true, to the extreme, could he break through. The five elements world was sealed. Ji Tianqing had worked hard for many years, but still could not trigger the laws of heaven and earth. The heavenly wolf star was not bound. If he cultivated here for many years, he would definitely be able to trigger the laws to temper his body and break through to the true God realm. Now, the heavenly wolf ancestor directly sent down the vast light of God. That was the pure and powerful heavenly God power from the upper realm, containing the laws of heaven and earth. As a result, Ji Tianqing's special divine body and soul were strengthened to the limit of the martial God realm, and broke through to the true God realm. At the same time, he also absorbed two laws of heaven and earth from the light of God. The first was the life force of a god, the star law. The second was the law controlled by the heavenly wolf ancestor, the space law. These two laws came from the heavenly wolf ancestor, and were above the heavenly God realm. If it were an ordinary martial god, even if the heavenly God's light tempered their divine body and soul, and broke through to the true God realm, they would not be able to refine these two laws. But Ji Tianqing was different. He had once surpassed the true God, heavenly God, and divine Lord realm, and reached the divine King realm. Not to mention the heavenly God realm laws, even the divine Lord and divine King realm laws, he knew them like the back of his hand. With his freakish physique, unique soul and rich cultivation experience, refining these two heavenly God-grade laws was not a difficult task. Time passed quietly. Unknowingly, for hours had passed. Ji Tianqing's God body, God soul, and God power had all been strengthened to the limit. The shackles that had not loosened for many years were finally broken by him. Swish! Immediately he emitted a dazzling seven-colored divine light, and soared into the sky like a rainbow. His aura underwent a huge change. His strength finally broke through the martial God realm, and stepped into the true God realm. Buzz! Layers of seven-colored ripples erupted from his body, and spread in all directions. Immediately, the heavenly wolf god was blasted back 5 kilometers, and landed outside the formation. The 28 lunar mansion's guardians, and over 100 priests were also pushed to the edge of the heavenly wolf arena. Everyone widened their eyes and stared at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Their faces were filled with shock. Wow, what is true God Tianqing doing? Did he just break through? The light of God bestowed by the primogenitor is actually so powerful that it allowed true God Tianqing to break through on the spot. Inconceivable. Only the heavenly wolf god saw the clues and frowned in confusion. After observing Ji Tianqing for a long time, he thought of a possibility and was immediately filled with shock. True God Tianqing looks like he just broke through to the true God realm. He was originally a true god, so why did he repeatedly break through? That's not right. He was originally just a martial god. Now that he was baptized by the light of God, he broke through to the true God realm. I understand now. That's right. Previously, true God Tianqing was only at the peak of the void God realm. Thinking of this, the heavenly wolf god was even more shocked. This is too inconceivable. Previously, he was only at the peak of the martial God realm, but his battle prowess was comparable to a true god. Now that he has truly broken through to the true God realm, how terrifying is his battle prowess? The heavenly wolf god did not dare to imagine. However, he deeply understood that he had to firmly hold on to this mysterious true god and maintain a close friendship. This was the only way to benefit the heavenly wolf race. 15 minutes later, Ji Tianqing successfully broke through to the true god realm. The 7-colored ripples bursting out of his body were quickly withdrawn. His aura began to converge, becoming even more unfathomable. Still, no one could detect his strength and realm, but he was suffused with the sacred and majestic aura of a ruler descending to the world and looking down on the universe. He was like a scorching light, making people not dare to look directly at him, and could only lower their heads. Even though Ji Tianqing had already broken through to the true god realm, but only half of the divine light that descended from the sky was consumed. The huge star vortex was still revolving around him, constantly pouring into his body. Therefore, Ji Tianqing did not end his cultivation. He formed a divine seal with both hands, his eyes tightly closed, still devouring the light of God. Invisibly, his physique and divine soul were still strengthening, his divine power further expanded, and his strength also rapidly increased. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours went by. It was not until his head fell under the sea of clouds and night fell that the divine light that covered the sky dissipated. The light of God was devoured by Ji Tianqing. His realm was stabilized, and his strength also increased greatly, reaching the peak of the first level of the true God realm. His slender and valiant body contained surging divine power, as if it could shatter the stars. He ended his cultivation and slowly opened his eyes. Swoosh! In his eyes, 2 majestic and domineering lights burst out as if they were solid. Everyone on the heavenly wolf arena was shocked, their hearts solemn, and they could not help but lower their heads. At this moment, Ji Tianqing had truly been reborn, transcending the category of mortals and returning to the ranks of gods. The heavenly wolf god was the first to recover. He hurriedly bowed and said excitedly, "Congratulations, true god Tianqing." Only then did the 28 lunar mansions, hundreds of priests, and tens of thousands of guards come back to their senses. Everyone bowed and congratulated him in unison. The heavenly wolf god was very smart. He saw that Ji Tianqing had just broken through to the true god realm, but he did not point it out. After everyone cheered, Ji Tianqing looked at the heavenly wolf god meaningfully. "Heavenly wolf god, speaking of which, I have to thank you for my gains." The heavenly wolf god was flattered and hurriedly waved his hand. No, true god Tianqing, you flatter me. You are the savior of the heavenly wolf tribe, and this is a gift you deserve. Even if you want to thank someone, you should thank my ancestor." Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with a smile, and he looked up at the sky. Fortunately, the light of God formed by billions of starlight had dissipated long ago. The heavenly wolf ancestor in the upper realm did not know what happened on the heavenly wolf arena. Otherwise, Ji Tianqing also wanted to see the heavenly wolf ancestor's reaction. It would be very interesting, right? After a long while, everyone calmed down. The ancestral worship ceremony ended in this way, leaving an unforgettable impression on all the heavenly wolf powerhouses. Ji Tianqing did not stay any longer, and left with the white dragon. Download address. Chapter 2556. The 28 lunar mansion guards and tens of thousands of guards stayed behind to clean up the mess. The heavenly wolf god personally welcomed Ji Tianqing and respectfully sent him off. Before leaving, the heavenly wolf god sighed from the bottom of his heart, thanking Ji Tianqing for his righteous help. Ji Tianqing did not say much. After exchanging a few words, he stepped onto the Tianqing battleship and sped away. The heavenly wolf god's attitude made him very clear. The heavenly wolf god really wanted to befriend him and pull him into a life and death alliance. He did not need to say much. With just a few words, the heavenly wolf god would help him wholeheartedly. Of course, Ji Tianqing did not need the heavenly wolf god's help in many areas. There was only one thing, and that was the safety of the 5 elements world. Ji Tianqing believed that the heavenly wolf god knew what to do without him needing to explain. In this way, he had achieved the goal of this trip. Moreover, he had an unexpected gain. After obtaining the heavenly wolf ancestor's light of God, not only did he break through to the true God realm, but he also refined 2 laws. This was simply a huge gain. It was enough to make any martial god go crazy. Swoosh! White Dragon steered the Tianqing battleship and flew through the sky at lightning speed. 2 hours later, the Tianqing battleship left the heavenly wolf star and entered the vast void. The battleship continued to fly into the depths of the void, heading straight for the purple firmament planet. Inside the battleship, Ji Tianqing, Qianyu Black Dragon, and Lan Kuan were all recuperating in seclusion. Especially Ji Tianqing. He wanted to take advantage of the next half a year to properly refine the 2 heavenly god-level laws. They were both true gods, but those who had grasped laws and those who had not could not be mentioned in the same breath. Just like the Southern Expedition Marshal, he had actually not completely grasped the power laws. Otherwise, he would not have lost so miserably. Unknowingly, 2 months passed. On this day, the Tianqing battleship sped through the starry sky like a black phantom. Suddenly, a large black shadow appeared in front of the battleship, surging over like a vortex. White Dragon, who was piloting the warship, suddenly woke up and looked ahead with bright eyes. After seeing the black shadow clearly, he immediately frowned and murmured with a grave expression, "It's actually a void storm? Damn it. This young master's luck is as good as the heavens. To think that I would encounter such bad luck." The White Dragon had roamed the Star River for a long time, and had ample experience. He knew very well that dangers lurked everywhere in the starry sky, and void storms were one of the most common dangers. One after another, vortex-like void storm after another, containing the power to destroy heaven and earth, was extremely terrifying. Small void storms were only a few thousand miles in radius. Those who were strong enough, such as heavenly gods, could easily deal with them. If they were to encounter a large void storm that spanned hundreds of thousands of miles, only Divine Lord experts would be able to deal with it. Even an ordinary heavenly deity would lose their life if they were not careful. Fortunately, the White Dragon was very experienced. He soon realized that the dozen or so void storms in front of him were extremely powerful. There were only a few small storms, each with a radius of only a few thousand miles. The other 10 void storms all reached a radius of more than 30,000 miles. Faced with such a dangerous situation, it was too late for him to steer the warship to avoid it. Therefore, he decisively controlled the array formation, allowing the warship to explode with extreme speed, crashing into one of the smaller void storms. Bam! Amidst a deafening loud noise, the 3,000 feet long Tianqing warship plunged into the pitch-black vortex. Instantly, the Tianqing warship was crushed and destroyed by the void storm, shaking violently. The terrifying crushing force ruthlessly crushed the surface of the warship, producing a series of sharp sounds that were especially ear-piercing. However, the void storm continued to collapse, unable to break through the defense of the Tianqing warship in the end. After a few breaths of time, when the Tianqing warship passed through the void storm, not a dent was left on the surface. The hair-raising crisis was resolved by the White Dragon just like that. The dozen or so void storms, with the power to destroy everything, flew into the distance. The Tianqing warship continued to fly into the depths of the void. The White Dragon revealed a look of relief and smiled proudly. Humph! Such a small storm, it's simply a piece of cake to this young master. Of course, the White Dragon's words were frivolous and arrogant. In reality, he became even more cautious and careful, pulling himself together at all times, observing the situation ahead. Unknowingly, 2 months' time passed. In these dull and boring 2 months, the White Dragon encountered several dangers one after another. Not only did he encounter a void storm again, he also encountered a mysterious black hole. A black hole was the most terrifying danger in the starry sky. It was an incomparably huge vortex that swallowed all energy, drifting endlessly in the void. It had no fixed residence and would never stop moving. Whether it was the debris in the starry sky, meteorites, or star remains, once swallowed by the black hole, everything would disappear without a trace. Apart from Divine King Realm powerhouses, no one could explore the situation inside the black hole. Even more so, no one knew what secrets the most mysterious black hole in the starry sky was hiding. Fortunately, the White Dragon had been concentrating and discovered the black hole's approach in advance. When the terrifying devouring power attacked, He steered the Tianqing warship ahead of time, avoiding the black hole's path of movement. This way, he also avoided the endgame of the warship being destroyed and people dying. Unknowingly, another month had passed. The White Dragon estimated that the Tianqing warship was still a month's journey away from the purple cloud star. Logically speaking, this was already the central zone of the purple cloud star zone, so it should be very safe. However, on this day, the Tianqing warship encountered a new danger. 3 warships came from the starry sky, blocking the Tianqing warship's path. The White Dragon observed carefully, and he had already seen the flags of the 3 warships, with swords and skulls hanging on them. His eyes suddenly brightened and he sneered. Interstellar pirates? I haven't encountered such a thing for more than 1,000 years. Since I'm bored, I'll use you guys to relieve my boredom. Interstellar pirates were also one of the common dangers in the starry sky. The interstellar pirates who roamed the starry sky and had no fixed residence gathered the powerhouses and geniuses of various planets and races. They had strong combat power, powerful divine weapons, and made a living by robbing. If it were in a peaceful and stable star zone, the interstellar pirates would be the main target of the various worlds. They usually had nowhere to hide and could only roam. However, the purple cloud star zone was in a state of change, and wars were everywhere. The Heaven Punishers had taken over the purple cloud star, but they were busy waging war to unify the various worlds. The entire star zone was in a state of war and chaos, which gave the interstellar pirates an opportunity. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, the 3 interstellar pirate warships surrounded the Tianqing warship. A dark red pillar of light lit up on the interstellar pirate warship, signaling the surrender. The White Dragon ignored it, and fearlessly steered the Tianqing warship toward one of the interstellar pirate warships. Chapter 2557. Kaboom! The Tianqing battleship collided with the pirate battleship in a deafening explosion. Suddenly, the 2,000 feet long pirate battleship was smashed into pieces and debris splattered everywhere. At least a few thousand martial Sacred Realm experts in strange outfits fell from the sky, roaring in anger and fear. There were also a dozen martial gods in armor and holding divine weapons. They cursed furiously and attacked the Tianqing battleship. Seeing this, Bai Long's smile became brighter and the disdain in his eyes became stronger. How dare you rob me with a few empty god-level battleships? The god of longevity has eaten arsenic and is tired of living. As he spoke, he steered the Tianqing battleship and turned around abruptly and charged toward the pirates. Bang, 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 bang. In the next moment, more than 1,000 pirates who could not dodge in time were hit by the Tianqing battleship and were smashed into pieces on the spot. Even the dozen or so martial god realm pirate leaders were knocked flying and coughed up blood continuously. The pirate leader was enraged by this scene. The remaining 2 pirate battleships immediately locked onto the Tianqing battleship and unleashed their most ferocious firepower, releasing hundreds of colorful light pillars. Boom, 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 boom. The Tianqing battleship dodged most of the attacks but was still hit by hundreds of light pillars. There was a series of loud bangs. Suddenly, the Tianqing battleship lit up with a sacred golden light and shook more than a dozen times. The hundreds of colorful light pillars collapsed on the spot and shattered into thousands of light spots. The pirate leader was dumbfounded, and so were the other pirate leaders. They did not know what to do. While everyone was in a daze, Bai Long steered the Tianqing battleship and charged toward the other pirate battleship. The pirate battleship was frightened. It immediately unleashed all its strength and turned around, swinging its tail and narrowly dodging the attack. The Tianqing battleship flew a few hundred miles before it turned around and charged toward the other pirate battleship. The 2 pirate battleships were frightened and dodged in a hurry. They did not dare to collide with the Tianqing battleship. Seeing this, the White Dragon laughed even more arrogantly. He was not in a hurry to release the divine cannon. Instead, he controlled the Tianqing battleship to rampage through the void, forcing the 2 pirate battleships to flee in panic. The interstellar pirates were forced into a fluster and were filled with grief and anger. The White Dragon, on the other hand, was having a lot of fun. Soon 15 minutes passed. More than half of the space pirates and more than a dozen martial gods were killed by Tianqing's battleship. The few remaining martial god realm pirate leaders fled back to the two warships in a panic. The two pirate warships also lost their temper. They were chased around until they were dizzy and disoriented, unable to differentiate between east and west. The leader of the island knew that he had run into a tough nut, so he could only swallow his anger and admit defeat. However, the White Dragon was not willing to let things end here. It chased after the two warships relentlessly, vowing to crush them into smithereens. At this moment, an indifferent and dignified voice sounded in White Dragon's mind. "Little White, after playing around for so long, you still haven't ended the battle. You've really disappointed me." There was no doubt that the person who spoke was Ji Tianqing. The White Dragon, who was in high spirits, suddenly stiffened as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. He smiled awkwardly and explained, "Master, please don't be angry. I was too playful and wanted to play with them for a while longer." "Don't worry, Master, I'll take care of them immediately." Before the White Dragon could finish, Ji Tianqing's voice sounded again. "No need. I'll do it myself. It's a good opportunity to test the power of the spatial laws." Hearing this, the White Dragon's divine sense sensed that Ji Tianqing had flown out of the battleship and entered the void. The next moment, he saw Ji Tianqing rushing toward a pirate battleship with the Sword of Burial of Heaven. Swoosh! A dazzling white light flashed. Ji Tianqing instantly crossed 1,000 miles and appeared above the pirate battleship. The next moment, Ji Tianqing held the Sword of Burial of Heaven with both hands and slashed down fiercely. Kaboom! The dazzling white sword slashed the pirate battleship with a deafening sound. The next moment, the 2,000-meter-long battleship was cut in half at the waist, splashing debris everywhere. More than 2,000 oddly dressed pirates were thrown out of the wreckage of the battleship and scattered in the void. There were also a dozen martial god experts in armor with different appearances floating in the void, trying their best to call out to the surrounding pirates. They were all pirate leaders. Then Ji Tianqing's body was wrapped in dazzling white light. He flashed a few times and rushed into the crowd. Swoosh! 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 The white light flashed continuously. He kept flashing in the crowd. Every time he appeared, he could bring about a sword light storm that could destroy heaven and earth. The dazzling white sword light swallowed the figures of countless pirates. Even the dozen pirate leaders were not spared. After a short 10 breaths, the dazzling white sword light gradually dissipated. More than 2,000 pirates and more than a dozen pirate leaders in the martial god realm were all smashed into powder and scattered in the void. Seeing this scene, White Dragon's eyes widened, revealing a look of horror. Oh my god! Since when did Master become so strong? When he broke through to the true god realm, he was not so fierce and powerful. Not only was Bai Long stunned, but the pirate leader on the other battleship was also filled with fear. After coming to his senses, the pirate leader quickly ordered the battleship to retreat quickly and escape from this place. However, Ji Tianqing quickly chased after them with his sword. The battleship was also split in half and crashed in the void. More than 2,000 pirates and more than a dozen experts scattered in the void and fled for their lives. Ji Tianqing began to chase. Dazzling white light bloomed all over his body. He turned into a deadly whirlwind and swept into the crowd. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Wherever the white whirlwind went, countless pirates were smashed into pieces and turned into ashes. Even those martial god-level pirate leaders were unable to withstand it, and were instantly killed. Ji Tianqing chased them for a few thousand miles and killed all the pirates and their leaders. Only the last pirate leader was left. He relied on his LV6 martial god realm strength to escape 20,000 miles away. When Ji Tianqing stopped him, he was scared out of his wits. He immediately stopped running and knelt on the ground with a panicked expression. He kept kowtowing and begging for mercy. However, the pirate leader was a member of a foreign tribe. He looked like a blue-black octopus the size of a mountain. He was extremely ugly and his body was covered with tentacles and pustules. Moreover, the language he spoke was strange. Ji Tianqing could not understand half of it. Ji Tianqing did not bother to listen to his nonsense and killed him with a stroke of his sword. Anyway, he did not have the leisure to take captives and would not let the pirate leader go. This was because he knew that the Starry Sky pirates roamed the star area and burned, killed, and plundered everywhere. Wherever they went, they were as cruel as the demon tribe. The only way to deal with such inhumane Starry Sky pirates was to kill them. Chapter 2558. After dealing with the space pirates, Ji Tianxing returned to the battleship. Bai Long's face was full of admiration as he could not help but exclaim, "Master, it looks like you've already refined the space law and mastered it very well. That's a medium-level law, and you've mastered it with your true immortal realm strength. It's really incredible and shocking the three realms." Ji Tianxing ignored him and said calmly, "Let's continue forward." "Okay." Bai Long did not feel embarrassed. He answered happily and continued to drive the battleship forward. Unknowingly, another month had passed. Tianxing's battleship crossed half a galaxy and finally arrived at Purple Cloud Planet. Bai Long saw a huge planet in the void ahead of him that was still hundreds of thousands of miles away. It was shining with a dazzling purple light. He could see that the planet shrouded in purple light was several times larger than the Five Elements world. Compared to the purple planet, the other planets in the void were so small that they were not worth mentioning. After seeing the purple planet's appearance, Bai Long's eyes flashed with a cold light, and his lips curled into a sneer. He sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianxing and reported, "Master, we're about to arrive at Purple Cloud Planet." Ji Tianxing, who was cultivating in seclusion and comprehending the law power, quickly woke up. He ended his cultivation, walked out of the secret room, and went to the cockpit. Bai Long stood in the middle of the cockpit, standing on a dark golden disc. The disc was engraved with array patterns, which were used to control Tianxing's battleship. Ji Tianxing stood in front, staring at the white light screen in the sky, observing the scene in the void. The scene in all directions was reflected on the light screen, clear and direct. Ji Tianxing stared at the light screen for a moment and said with a frown, "Purple Cloud Planet looks peaceful, but it's already been occupied by the Heaven Punishers. If I'm not wrong, Purple Cloud Planet must be heavily guarded, and no one can enter or leave as they wish." The white dragon looked indifferent and said proudly, "So what? Let's find a secluded place and try to penetrate the purple light shield. Then, we can enter the purple cloud star." Ji Tianxing nodded slightly and continued, "Entering the purple cloud star is not a difficult task. The main problem is, what should we do after entering the purple cloud star? Bai Long, pay close attention to the situation on Zixiao star. I need to think about the next plan." After that, Ji Tianxing left the cockpit. Bai Long continued to steer the warship towards Zixiao planet. 3 days later, the battleship flew close to the purple cloud star, very close to the purple light shield. At this time, the Tianxing battleship stopped and floated in the void. White Dragon carefully observed the surrounding situation, his eyes sharp and sharp. Through the screen in the cockpit, he could clearly see the situation on Zixiao planet. A gigantic purple light barrier enveloped the peaceful star. Every once in a while, the Heaven Slayer race's battleships would fly around the purple light barrier. Of course, White Dragon could tell that they were the Heaven Slayer race's patrol team responsible for protecting the purple cloud star. However, other than the Heaven Slayer race's battleships, there were many other battleships of different styles flying in from all directions and entering the purple cloud star. White Dragon could tell that these strange battleships came from various large worlds and races. He could not help but feel puzzled and murmured to himself, "Strange. The purple cloud star has already been taken over by the Heaven Slayer race. Shouldn't it be under martial law? Why can so many alien battleships enter the purple cloud star?" Filled with doubts, he steered the battleship to the left. In the void, there was a dark gold battleship heading towards the purple cloud star. Whoosh! The Tianxing battleship was huge and extremely fast. It quickly stopped that battleship. The dark gold battleship immediately stopped and looked warily at the Tianxing battleship. Bai Long left the Tianxing battleship and flew in front of the dark gold battleship. He gestured with his hands and feet. Then, the hatch of the dark gold battleship opened, and several alien race elites in golden armor flew out. These alien race elites looked like elephants. Their bodies were as large as mountains, and they had 4 thick hooves and huge trunks. Bai Long recognized them as the Golden Elephant race. He racked his brains to recall and spoke to them in the language of the Golden Elephant race. After a long stuttering conversation, he finally understood the situation and the reason. Thus, he thanked the Golden Elephant race elites and returned to the Tianqing battleship. The dark gold battleship did not linger and headed straight for the purple cloud star. Bai Long hurriedly found Ji Tianqing and reported everything in detail. Master, I've heard the news. The Golden Elephant race battleship just now came from the faraway Golden Elephant star. Half a year ago, that star was taken over by the Heaven Slayer race, and the Golden Elephant race has become their slaves. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked with interest, if they are slaves of the Heaven Slayer race, then what are the Golden Elephant race doing on the purple cloud star? Could it be that the Golden Elephant race has brought a huge amount of resources and wealth to pay tribute to the Heaven Slayer race? Bai Long hurriedly nodded and explained with a smile. Master, you are so wise. That's right. The cowards of the Golden Elephant race are here to pay tribute to the Heaven Slayer race. Moreover, it's not just the Golden Elephant race. More than 100 races from other worlds have come to pay tribute to the Heaven Slayer race and swear allegiance to them. I heard from the Golden Elephant race's God Lord that the Heaven Slayer race is holding a myriad kingdom divine assembly. All races that have submitted to the Heaven Slayer race or want to surrender have to pay tribute and participate in the assembly. Hearing this, Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile. He said disdainfully, "Haha. There are only about 300 mortal worlds in the entire purple cloud star zone. Where did the myriad kingdom divine assembly come from? The Heaven Slayer race is bluffing and bluffing. They want to intimidate the major worlds and capture them without shedding a drop of blood." Bai Long nodded and sneered. Haha. Nothing can be hidden from Master's sharp eyes. That's right, that's the Heaven Slayer race's intention. After all, the South Conquering Marshal was severely injured by you and has been in seclusion to recuperate. He can't lead the army. The Heaven Slayer race's forces are too scattered, so it's difficult for them to invade the major worlds one by one. That's why the Heaven Slayer race created this myriad kingdom divine assembly to win over the hearts of the people. I predict that the Heaven Slayer race will use the major races to deal with the worlds that refuse to submit. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said, Yes, there are only so many schemes that the Heaven Slayer race can use. It's easy to understand. Since they want to hold the myriad kingdom divine assembly, we can take advantage of it. Bai Long's eyes lit up. He asked, Master, what do you mean? Ji Tianqing said calmly, Pretend to submit to the Heaven Slayer race and enter Purple Cloud Star using the excuse of participating in the myriad kingdom divine assembly. Brilliant. Bai Long smiled proudly and gave him a thumbs up. Then he asked, What happens after we enter Purple Cloud Star? Ji Tianqing said snappily, I don't know the situation in Purple Cloud Star. How can I have a specific plan? We'll talk about it after we enter Purple Cloud Star. We'll act according to the situation. End of chapter. This book came from Chapter 2559. After making up his mind, Ji Tianqing started to look for his target. The Tianqing battleship was special. It was difficult for him to disguise himself as a tribe and enter Purple Cloud Star alone. Moreover, a battleship made of dawnstones would easily arouse suspicion. Therefore, Ji Tianqing decided to find a foreign tribe's battleship and sneak in. He left the battleship and entered the void alone to keep the Tianqing battleship. After waiting patiently for 3 days in the dark and cold void, he finally found his target. Swoosh! A silvery white battleship that was 2,000 feet long sped through the void toward Purple Cloud Star. The silvery white battleship had a beautiful design like a crescent moon. Even the body of the battleship was engraved with a crescent moon pattern. You are the one, Ji Tianqing murmured. He quickly entered the state of invisibility and approached the battleship. Soon he encountered the crescent moon battleship. While the battleship was not paying attention, he quietly flew to the battleship and entered the white light. The silver light that the battleship emitted was the powerful star divine power. Coincidentally, Ji Tianqing had just refined the star rules, and his control of the star divine power had reached the level of meticulous detail. Swoosh! He easily passed through the star divine light and stuck to the silver battleship. He took out the sword of burial of heaven and drilled a fist-sized hole in the battleship. He then shrunk his body and entered the battleship. After entering the battleship, he maintained his state of invisibility and moved forward cautiously. As he searched, he released a powerful spiritual consciousness and shrouded the entire battleship. After a short while, he figured out the situation in the battleship. The Middle Empty God Realm battleship carried hundreds of Martial Sage Realm guards and 3 Martial God Realm elites. The leader was a silvery white young lady in a long silver dress. The young lady's strength had reached level 7 Martial God Realm. However, she looked like she was about 17 years old, and she still looked young. She looked very similar to a human. However, she had a pair of wings on her back and a silver crescent moon mark on her forehead. The 2 martial gods following the girl with the crescent moon were old women in loose cloaks and godly robes. Their strength had reached the 5th layer martial god realm too. In addition, the battleship's cargo hold was filled with a large amount of cultivation resources and precious star moon divine stones. Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a while before he recalled the information. If I'm not wrong, these should be the Moon Spirit clan. They use the silver moon as their natal power. 1,000 years ago, when the sword god roamed the starry sky, he came into contact with the 100 races. The Moon Spirit tribe was one of them. Therefore, not only could Ji Tianqing recognize the Moon Spirit clan's language, but he could also understand their language. The Moon Spirit's battleship. At this time, Ji Tianqing's divine sense detected that the Crescent Moon girl and 2 old women were talking in a hidden room. The Crescent Moon girl's mood was heavy and low, and there was a strong resentment between her brows. She said coldly with her back to the 2 old ladies, "Even now, I can't get over it. The despicable and cruel Heaven Punisher tribe invaded the Moon Spirit world and started a great war. They slaughtered billions of our people. Their evil deeds brought about a devastating blow to our tribe. Not even 1,000 years can erase the pain. Why do we still have to bow to the Heaven Punisher tribe and offer up our tribe's treasure? Priestesses, are we really going to surrender to the Heaven Punisher tribe? If our people know about this, they will hate us and see us as a disgrace to the Moon Spirit tribe." The young lady was agitated. Her voice was filled with indignation and unyielding. However, the 2 old ladies in divine robes shook their heads and sighed bitterly. They tried to comfort her. "God Lord Silvermoon, don't you understand? We can't go against the tide. The Heaven Punisher tribe is the most powerful tribe in the entire star region. They are blessed by the gods. Even if we did our best and sacrificed all our experts to stop the Heaven Punisher fleet's invasion, we would still die. However, if we die one after another, the Heaven Punisher will send another fleet to invade. Who can stop them? God Lord, what time is it now? Why can't you understand? Even if you are unwilling, please respect the Council of Elders' decision. We must submit to the Heaven Punisher tribe. Even if we become slaves to the Heaven Punisher tribe, we can at least protect 20 billion Moon Spirit people. As long as we are still alive, there is still hope for us to rise again. If we oppose the Heaven Punisher tribe, they will have the favor of the gods. Our Moon Spirit race will only perish." God Lord Silvermoon furrowed his brow and fell silent upon hearing the advice of the 2 priests. Her expression was heavy and sorrowful, her eyes brimming with unwillingness. However, she also understood that the 2 priests were not lying. If they clashed with the Heaven Punisher tribe, they would not have a good end. After a long silence, God Lord Silvermoon said in a low voice, "I can obey the Council of Elders' decision and participate in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly, and surrender to the Heaven Punisher tribe. However, I will leave this matter to the 2 of you. I will remain on the warship and enter seclusion to cultivate for a while." It was clear that God Lord Silvermoon was unwilling to submit, much less kowtow to the Heaven Punisher tribe and beg for peace. The 2 priests were instantly put in a difficult spot. They bitterly smiled and tried to persuade her. "God Lord, aren't you being a little too obvious? You're already here, so how can you not participate in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly? The Heaven Punisher generals will definitely see through your intentions. If they take their anger out on our race, the Moon Spirit Star will be in trouble." But God Lord Silvermoon was unmoved. She firmly said, This God Lord disdains to wag my tail and beg for mercy. Otherwise, I would rather die. I've made up my mind. Do as you see fit." The two god-robed priests suddenly stiffened, and their expressions became somewhat ugly. But there was nothing they could do, nor could they force God Lord Silvermoon. At this moment, the Crescent warship arrived near the Violet Barrier, and was stopped by two Heaven Punisher warships. The two priests could only withdraw from the secret chamber, and inform the Heaven Punisher of their identities and intentions. Once the two old women left, the gloomy secret chamber fell silent once more. God Lord Silvermoon stood in the darkness, staring at the light screen on the wall, and then at Purple Heaven Star, her eyes flashing with deep hatred. Just when her thoughts were in turmoil and her emotions were in turmoil, a deep and dignified male voice resounded through the secret chamber. "Since you've decided to submit to the Heaven Punisher race, wag your tail and beg for mercy as a slave, why are you going back on your word now?" God Lord Silvermoon was jolted out of his stupor by this voice. He quickly turned around and scanned the area with sharp eyes. "Who is it? Who's speaking? Come out!" But despite God Lord Silvermoon's cold voice echoing through the secret chamber, no one appeared. The cold and indifferent male voice spoke once more. "If you don't want to live and be enslaved by the Heaven Punisher race, why have you come here to surrender?" Indecisive people are often the ones who cause the deaths of their clansmen. God Lord Silvermoon instantly tensed up. With a whoosh, she pulled out her divine sword and coldly stared into the darkness. "The matters of my moon spirit race have nothing to do with this, sir, so you have no right to comment. Just who is this, sir? When did you intrude on my race's warship?" End of this chapter. This book came from Chapter 2560. God Lord Silvermoon was on full alert. She didn't dare to believe that someone had snuck onto the warship and overheard her conversation with the two priests. Just how strong was this person to possess such skills? Hundreds of thoughts flashed through her mind as she tried to guess at this person's identity. At this moment, the dignified man spoke once more. "Who I am is not important. What is important is that you follow your heart and not disgrace the integrity of a God Lord, much less the faith of the Moon Spirit race's people." God Lord Silvermoon's face stiffened as she sternly asked, "What relationship does your excellency have with the Moon Spirit race? Why are you interfering in the affairs of my race?" The dignified male voice replied indifferently, "Me? Just like you. I am a God Lord of a world in the purple firmament star zone. Just like the Moon Spirit race, the people under my command were invaded and massacred by the heaven-punishing race." Hearing this, God Lord Silvermoon frowned and jeered. "So that's how it is. Didn't you also come to participate in the Myriad Kingdom God Conference and surrender to the heaven-punishing race? Yet you dare to shamelessly boast and urge me to resist? What right do you have?" "Ha ha ha ha." The young man coldly laughed. "No, you're wrong. I didn't come to participate in the Myriad Kingdom God Conference, much less to surrender." God Lord Silvermoon frowned and asked, "Then what are you doing here?" The young man hiding in the shadows replied, "To assassinate the Southern Marshal and destroy the heaven-punishing army. Do you believe me?" "What?" God Lord Silvermoon froze for a moment before regaining his wits. Shaking his head, he said, "Ha ha ha, what shameless boasting! How much do you know about the heaven-punishing race? Do you know what kind of terrifying existence the elusive Southern Expedition Marshal is?" The young man calmly said, "My understanding of the heaven-punishing race might not be as deep as yours, but the number of heaven-punishing experts I've killed with my sword is definitely more than what you've seen. As for the Southern Marshal, he's just a fifth-degree true god." Hiss. God Lord Silvermoon couldn't help but suck in a cold breath of air in shock. Just a fifth-stage realm true god? Nothing? Without waiting for the young man to answer, the two priests in divine robes returned. After entering the secret chamber, the two old women looked around with puzzled expressions. "Divine Master, who were you talking to just now?" "Divine Lord, what's wrong? What happened?" As they spoke, the two old women examined God Lord Silvermoon, their gazes falling on the divine sword in her hand. God Lord Silvermoon hurriedly put away his divine sword and put on a stern expression. "It's nothing. You heard wrong. Oh right, what's the situation outside?" The two old women suppressed their doubts and stopped asking about this matter. They bowed and explained. Divine Master, the patrol guards of the Heaven Punisher race stopped us. After inspecting the battleship and asking about our intentions, they let us pass. Now that we have entered the Purple Cloud Star, we are on our way to the Heaven-Punishing Deity Palace to participate in the 10,000 Kingdoms God Conference. God Lord Silvermoon expressionlessly said, I understand. All of you are dismissed. The two old women looked at each other. Then they bowed and took their leave. The secret chamber quickly fell silent once more. God Lord Silvermoon scanned the surroundings with blazing eyes as she softly asked, Hey, are you still there? Here, the young man who was hiding in the dark replied. God Lord Silvermoon instantly relaxed, his wariness vanishing. She hesitated for a moment before asking, Sir, did you infiltrate my race's battleship because you wanted to infiltrate the Purple Cloud Star to carry out the assassination? The young man replied. God Lord Silvermoon raised her eyebrows and playfully said, Sir, I am filled with admiration for your daring. However, the Heaven Punisher race is the strongest race blessed by the gods, and the Southern Marshal is a true god expert. Sir, for you to be so confident, could you also be a true god expert? If you aren't, then how is this any different from sending you to your death? The hidden young man calmly replied, There are some things that someone has to do. It has nothing to do with life or death, success or failure. Upon hearing these words, God Lord Silvermoon instantly felt a deep sense of respect, and his clear eyes became even brighter. She turned to the dark corner of the secret chamber and respectfully clasped her hands. Sir, Silvermoon admires your courage and will to fight. Please accept Silvermoon's bow. The hidden young man indifferently said, Empty courtesy is useless. If you are also unwilling, if you still have any hot-bloodedness or dignity left, you should not have submitted to the Heaven Punisher race. God Lord Silvermoon instantly frowned and bitterly smiled. Sir, since you heard my conversation with the two priests, you should also know that I had no choice. As the leader of the Moon Spirit race, I must consider the overall situation. The young man calmly said, Since that's the case, I won't force you. I will only ask you one thing. I want to infiltrate the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly and use this chance to kill the Heaven Punisher. Are you willing to help me? God Lord Silvermoon hesitated, a look of struggle and embarrassment on her face. Forget it. Just treat it as if I never came. The young man hiding in the dark sighed in a bleak tone, as if he was a little disappointed. God Lord Silvermoon was alarmed and hastily called out, Hold on. The hidden young man seemed to stop and asked, How about it? God Lord Silvermoon no longer hesitated. Suppressing her complicated thoughts, she firmly said, I'm willing. Sir will never submit to the Heaven Punisher race, and would rather die in battle for revenge. Such resolve and daring makes Silvermoon feel ashamed of her inferiority. Since Silvermoon and Sir are connected by fate, how can Silvermoon just sit by and watch? Sir, I thank you for your warning and for enlightening Silvermoon, so that she will no longer be confused. After saying this, God Lord Silvermoon bowed to the darkness. Sir, how can I help you? The hidden young man calmly said, It's very simple. After you participate in the Myriad Kingdom Divine Assembly and offer your tribute, don't be in a hurry to leave. Help me take a few people to the Zero Continent. The Zero Continent? God Lord Silvermoon raised an eyebrow and asked in confusion. That's one of the 5 continents of Violet Heaven Star, and it's also the most prosperous continent. Many Heaven Punishers are stationed there. Sir's request is that simple? Of course, the young man replied. I agree. God Lord Silvermoon decisively agreed. However, a hint of craftiness flashed through her clear eyes, and she playfully said, But I can't easily believe your words. Only if you stop hiding and come out to speak with me can you prove your sincerity. It was clear that God Lord Silvermoon was extremely curious about this mysterious young man. God Lord Silvermoon had originally believed that this man would not show himself in order to maintain his mystery. But to her surprise, the moment she spoke, a golden light flashed in the corner of the secret chamber. Whoosh! A handsome young man in a white robe appeared in the secret chamber out of thin air. Chapter 2561. The white-robed youth quietly stood in the center of the secret chamber, his hands clasped behind his back. God Lord Silvermoon's eyes widened in shock as he stared at the white-robed youth. You are a human God Lord? This was God Lord Silvermoon's first time leaving the moon spirit world. She had never seen a human before. But she had been well-read since she was a child, reading countless ancient biographies and seeing descriptions and legends of the human race. The handsome, valiant, and mysterious white-robed young man in front of her was exactly what she imagined a human powerhouse to look like. The white-robed youth did not hide the truth and nodded. God Lord Silvermoon was even more surprised as she curiously asked, "Since you are a human, how do you know the language of the moon spirit race?" The youth shook his head and expressionlessly said, "It's a secret." God Lord Silvermoon pursed her lips, somewhat disappointed as she muttered to herself, "Humph," acting all mysterious. The youth did not reply, only said in a dignified voice, "Your wish has been fulfilled. If there's nothing else." Before he could finish, God Lord Silvermoon hastily waved her hand and asked, "Don't. I have another question. What is your name?" The white-robed young man answered decisively, "Tianhang." "Tianxing?" God Lord Silvermoon muttered this name, a smile on her pretty face. "I'll remember you. I hope that you won't disappoint me." "Disappoint?" Tianxing raised an eyebrow and calmly said, "I only bring hope to my friends and despair to my enemies." God Lord Silvermoon once more pursed her lips and shot him a skeptical glance. "If overconfidence is arrogance." Tianxing did not reply, nor did he want to explain. God Lord Silvermoon had been snubbed, so she changed the topic. "Tianxing, in another 4 hours, we will reach heaven-punishing divine palace to take part in the myriad countries' divine assembly. What plans do you have? And didn't you want me to help you bring a few people? Where are they?" Tianxing did not respond to the question about the plan. He indifferently said, "The time is not yet right. Once you offer the tribute, I will hand them over to you." After saying this, he turned and vanished into the darkness. "Hey!" God Lord Silvermoon frowned and unhappily stomped his foot. "You scoundrel, how could you be so rude? I haven't even finished speaking." However, Tianxing had already hidden in the darkness and was completely silent. God Lord Silvermoon was bored, so he gloomily left the secret chamber and went to the treasury to check on the tributes. Unknowingly, for hours had passed. The Silvermoon battleship faced the golden sun and flew in the white sea of clouds. 10,000 miles ahead, a dazzling golden light appeared in the sea of clouds. Looking from afar, one could vaguely see that there were dozens of majestic palaces within the dazzling light and shadow. Without a doubt, the group of majestic palaces was the heaven-punishing divine palace. Around 15 minutes later, the Silver Moon battleship arrived outside the heaven-punishing divine palace and stopped in the spacious plaza. The square was paved with supreme-grade spiritual jade and had a radius of 100 miles. Around the square, there were tens of thousands of soldiers in black armor standing guard, looking majestic. In the center of the plaza were 3 massive statues. The statue in the center was more than 10,000 feet tall, depicting a dignified middle-aged man with the face of a man and the body of a lion. This man wore dark golden armor and a dazzling crown. This was the supreme leader of the heaven-punishing race, Great Emperor Heaven Punishing. On either side of Great Emperor Heaven Punishing was a statue that was more than 8,000 feet tall. These 2 statues were also dignified experts of the Heaven Punishing race who looked down on the world. They seemed to be Great Emperor Heaven Punishing's left and right arms. It was obvious at a glance that these 2 statues were probably the left and right protectors. After passing by Great Emperor Heaven Punishing's statues and continuing deeper into the plaza, one could see several majestic palaces. Every palace was magnificent, extremely luxurious and dignified. There was a huge signboard above the gate of the palace in the middle. The words Heaven Punishing Divine Palace were written on it. Outside the gate of the Heaven Punishing Divine Palace, there were 99 steps leading to the plaza. Every step of the stairs was guarded by 2 guards in black armor. More than 100 martial gods of various appearances from various worlds stood respectfully at the bottom of the stairs, waiting quietly. Without permission, they did not dare to step onto the steps, much less enter the heaven-punishing divine palace. The expressions and gazes of all the experts of the foreign tribes were extremely complicated. Some of them were filled with reverence as they waited respectfully. Some of them appeared to be respectful, but deep in their eyes, they were filled with hatred and humiliation. Some of them had complicated emotions, and their expressions were unreadable. It was as if they were suffering from great torment. After all the experts in the plaza had been defeated by the heaven-punishing race. This time, they had traveled across the starry sky to Purple Cloud Planet to participate in the 10,000 countries holy meet and offer tributes to the heaven-punishing race. They had been invaded by the heaven-punishing race, and countless people had been killed. Yet, they still had to offer tributes and beg for mercy. How humiliating was this? However, when the experts arrived at the heaven-punishing divine palace, they still had to wait in the plaza. Without permission from the heaven-punishing race, they could not even take a step onto the steps. This was an even greater humiliation. All the experts of the foreign tribes understood that the heaven-punishing race was intentionally humiliating them. But they could only endure the humiliation and continue to wait. Whoosh! The silver moon warship flew over from the distance and landed on the plaza. In a flash of light, God Lord Silvermoon put away the warship. She and the two priests appeared on the plaza and began to walk toward the heaven-punishing divine palace. The 200 moon spirit race guards remained on the silver moon warship and were being carried by God Lord Silvermoon. Her spatial ring was also filled with priceless tributes. Rustle, rustle, rustle. With light footsteps, God Lord Silvermoon and the two priests quickly arrived at the center of the plaza. God Lord Silvermoon stopped and looked up at the three towering statues, his face calm as he examined them. But a group of heaven-punishing guards immediately flew over. The captain of the guards sternly rebuked, "Hurry and leave. Do you think that the emperor of my race is something that lowly commoners like you can admire?" A thick sense of humiliation welled up in God Lord Silvermoon's heart. Her face chilled, and a cold light flashed through her eyes. However, the two priests hurriedly bowed and apologized to the captain of the guards before escorting God Lord Silvermoon away. God Lord Silvermoon could only suppress her anger and humiliation, silently lowering her head and walking toward the heaven-punishing divine palace. She reached the edge of the plaza and the steps leading up to the divine palace. She and the two priests, like the experts of the other races, quietly stood and patiently waited. No one came to ask or inform them when the myriad kingdom god assembly would begin. The blazing sun in the sky slowly set, and night gradually descended. Over 100 alien race experts were still standing where they were, not daring to utter a single word of complaint. In the next 2 days, 10 some more groups of foreign experts arrived, all of them here to offer tributes. God Lord Silvermoon was getting impatient. He sent a message to the secret room in the Silvermoon battleship. "Tianqing, are you still there?" But no one answered. Chapter 2562. God Lord Silvermoon called out several more times, but she received no response. Little talk following a dream. Only now did she realize that Ji Tianqing had left the Silver Moon battleship some time ago. Strange, when did he leave the battleship? Why didn't I sense him at all? This scoundrel comes and goes without a trace. He's far too mysterious. I wonder if he has the strength of a true god. If he can successfully assassinate the Southern vanquishing marshal? God Lord Silvermoon expressionlessly stood at her original spot, seemingly patiently waiting. In truth, all sorts of thoughts were flashing through her mind, all of them concerning Ji Tianqing. Unknowingly, she even began to worry for Ji Tianqing. After a long while, she finally came back to her senses. When she thought back to those thoughts, her cheeks burned as she thought to herself, what's wrong with me? I'm worried about a strange and even a little annoying fellow. He's so cold and arrogant. I don't care if he lives or dies." Although that was what she was thinking, she couldn't help but look around again after a short while. She quietly observed the plaza to see if Ji Tianqing would appear. At that moment, a group of black-armored guards from the heaven-punishing race walked over from nearby. There were 6 guards in total, 5 of them wielding halberds while the captain had a long sword at his waist. The 6 guards walked past the crowd, their eyes looking straight ahead, their expressions dignified and arrogant. But the black-armored guard at the very back of the group glanced at God Lord Silvermoon as he walked past her. He even winked at her. This sudden sight caused God Lord Silvermoon's body to tremble, and her eyes widened. She almost thought that she was seeing things. But she could clearly see that the guard really had winked at her. It's him. That look. I can't be wrong. It's definitely him. God Lord Silvermoon instantly recognized him, and her mind was reeling with shock. But she immediately came back to her senses, and looked around in a somewhat guilty manner. Seeing that the two priests and the foreign race experts around them did not notice this detail, her heart finally settled back into her stomach. She stared at the back of the guard, watching him climb the steps into the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace, her heart brimming with anticipation and shock. This guy, when did he leave my battleship? What method did he use to disguise himself as a guard of the Heaven Punishing race, and enter the Heaven Punishing Divine Palace, so openly? This was too crazy. This guy is crazy. There was no doubt that the Heaven Punishing Guard was Ji Tianxing in disguise. God Lord Silvermoon did not understand his methods, nor could he figure out how he had done it. However, to Ji Tianxing, this was a walk in the park for him, and he had a lot of experience. When the Silver Moon battleship was about to reach the Heaven Punishing Divine Palace, he quietly left the Silver Moon battleship. He stealthily approached the Heaven Punishing Divine Palace, and encountered a patrol team in the Sea of Clouds. The 6 Heaven Punishing protectors were all martial sages, and they were nothing to him. With a little trick, he instantly killed the guard at the end of the team. Then his divine sense entered this guard's body, and he transformed into a Heaven Punishing guard. Dong dong dong. With a series of heavy footsteps, Ji Tianxing followed the guard into the Heaven Punishing Divine Palace. In this vast palace with a radius of 1,000 feet, the ground and walls were resplendent and dazzling, and several hundred gemstones and lanterns lit the surroundings. 18 massive pillars were arranged in 3 rows in the middle of the palace. At the head of the hall, there was an incomparably huge, sacred, and dignified throne. Ji Tianxing could tell at a glance that this was the throne of the Southern Conquering Marshal. However, the throne was still empty and the Southern Conquering Marshal was nowhere to be seen. In the 4 corners of the hall, there were 8 marshals' personal guards in silver armor. They were all in the martial god realm. Below the marshal's throne stood a purple-robed heaven-punishing expert who appeared to be a military advisor. This person had sinister eyes and exuded the powerful aura of a true god expert. Ji Tianxing could sense that this person was at level 2 true god realm. Thus he hurriedly withdrew his divine sense and began to cautiously advance. A few moments later, the guard passed through the palace, walked up to the purple-robed military advisor, and respectfully bowed. "Greetings, General Dianxing." The purple-robed military advisor, who was addressed as General Dianxing, nodded expressionlessly. His dignified gaze swept across the 6 people and finally landed on the guard captain. He asked, "What's the situation outside?" The guard captain cupped his fists and bowed, replying respectfully, "General Dianxing, it's peaceful outside Purple Cloud Star. Now that our tribe rules the entire star field, those lowly commoners have obediently come to pay tribute. Who dares to cause trouble?" General Dianxing nodded expressionlessly and continued to ask, "What about the people in the square? Are they all waiting obediently?" The guard captain hurriedly nodded and said in a disdainful tone, "General, more than 100 lowly commoners from more than 50 worlds are all waiting obediently. The earliest batch of lowly commoners has been waiting for more than half a month. Even so, they dare not complain at all, let alone make a ruckus." General Dianxing nodded slightly, stroked his beard with one hand, and sneered. "Now the Grand Marshal is still recuperating in Purple Cloud Cave. He will probably be back in a month. Let those lowly commoners wait outside the palace. When the Grand Marshal returns, the Myriad Kingdom God Assembly will begin. By then, let those lowly commoners submit to the Grand Marshal and obediently offer tribute. This will be a surprise for the Grand Marshal." The guard captain hurriedly flattered, "General, you are so thoughtful to come up with the idea of the Myriad Kingdom God Assembly. By then, when the Grand Marshal sees such a grand occasion, his anger will definitely dissipate, and he will even reward you handsomely." General Dianxing was very pleased with these words. After stroking his beard and pondering for a moment, he thought of another idea and sneered. Since we want to humiliate those lowly commoners, we have to do it thoroughly. Go and announce the news. Let all the lowly commoners kneel outside the palace, hold the tribute with both hands, and raise it above their heads. If anyone doesn't do it or slacks off, capture them and torture them as a warning to the others. The guard captain immediately grinned and sneered. He hurriedly saluted and said, "General, this move of yours is really wonderful. Since those lowly commoners have abandoned their dignity and attacked our clan for survival, we will tear their dignity to shreds and trample on them. Only in this way can we let them know how powerful our clan is. Only death awaits those who oppose my clan." That's right, that's right. General Dianxing nodded proudly and waved his hand to signal the guard captain to pass on the order. Thus, the guard captain bowed and left the palace. Ji Tianxing and the 4 guards also turned to leave. But at this moment, General Dianxing's gaze locked onto Ji Tianxing. He suddenly frowned and shouted, "You! Stay here!" Ji Tianxing stopped in his tracks, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. The other 4 black armored guards looked at him at the same time, showing sympathy and pity in their eyes, because they knew that Ji Tianxing was doomed. Chapter 2563. The 4 black armored guards had always followed General Dianxing, and were under his direct command. Therefore they knew a secret. When the heaven-conquering fleet attacked Purple Cloud Planet, they were not only met with resistance from countless experts, but they were also attacked by an ancient giant beast. It was a gigantic ancient divine beast that could cover the sky and the sun. It had the power to destroy heaven and earth. It was rumored that it was the guardian divine beast of Purple Cloud Planet. Its appearance was like a divine bird soaring in the sky. Its entire body was golden and dazzling, even more dazzling than the sun. When it spread its wide wings, it could cover 1,000 miles of the sky. When it waved its huge claws, it could easily destroy the heaven-conquering fleet. When the divine bird spread its wings, it could cross thousands of miles in an instant. It was as fast as the aurora. Therefore, the guardian divine bird was the most difficult to deal with. It was even more powerful than the divine masters of Purple Cloud Planet. If it were not for the guardian divine bird, the Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal would not have spent more than 40 years and sacrificed hundreds of thousands of soldiers to conquer Purple Cloud Planet. After the war, Purple Cloud Planet was enslaved by the Heaven-Conquering Fleet. Many experts had died in battle, and the Divine Masters were basically all dead. However, the Guardian Divine Bird had survived. Of course, the Divine Bird had been severely injured, and was on the verge of death. The Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal had wanted to kill the Divine Bird to prevent future trouble. However, when he found out about the Divine Bird's background and its true identity, he gave up on the idea. He imprisoned the Divine Bird in the depths of the Divine Palace, and used a powerful divine power and divine array to suppress the Divine Bird in the darkness. Then he ordered General Dianxing to be in charge of this matter. Every 10 days he would send a small amount of golden sunstones to the Divine Bird to replenish its energy and heal its injuries. The purpose was to keep the Divine Bird alive, so that its power would not dissipate and it would die from exhaustion. Everyone who knew about this understood the Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal's intention. He wanted to tame the Divine Bird. After all, the Divine Bird's combat power at its peak was comparable to his warship. Moreover, the Divine Bird had intelligence and thought. It could continue to grow and become stronger. The Southern Conquering Fleet Marshal wanted to tame the Divine Bird as a mount, so that it would be easier for him to roam the void in the future. However, the Divine Bird had an extremely stubborn personality. Even after being imprisoned for a few years, it still refused to submit, and was very irritable. The guards who sent the golden sunstones to it did not have a good ending. More than half of the people were killed by the Divine Birds. Even if a small number of people managed to escape, they were severely injured and crippled. In the past few years, more than 2,000 guards had been killed or injured. Therefore, when General Dianxing asked Ji Tianxing to stay, the 4 black armored guards thought of this at the same time. While they pitied Ji Tianxing, they also secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, General Pointing Star didn't choose them. What are you waiting for? Don't you need to do anything? General Dianxing looked at the 4 black armored guards and reprimanded them sternly. The 4 black armored guards immediately shrunk their necks. They hurriedly bowed and left the hall. Only General Dianxing and Ji Tianxing were left. General Dianxing took out a black pouch from his interspatial ring and handed it to Ji Tianxing. Here are 10 pieces of golden sun rock. You know what I mean. As he spoke, General Dianxing stared at him sternly. However, Ji Tianxing was not afraid at all. He said calmly, General, I don't understand. Ha! General Dianxing sneered and said in a contemptuous tone, Boy, I didn't realize that a small guard like you could be so shrewd. You don't even bat an eyelid and you dare to play dumb in front of me? Although Ji Tianxing did not understand what was going on, he had a bad feeling. General Dianxing saw that he was silent, so he simply said, Take these golden sun rocks and send them to the Golden Sun Palace. Give them to the divine bird. After that he added, This is an order. If you dare to disobey, I will kill you now. Ji Tianxing suddenly realized that this task was definitely life-threatening. He showed an appropriate expression of fear. After hesitating for a moment, he slowly reached out and took the pouch. He bowed his head and said, Yes, sir. After that, he held the black pouch with both hands and turned to walk out of the palace. General Dianxing stared at his back and sneered. He murmured, Little fella, you dare to show off in front of me with your little tricks? Ha ha. Good luck to you. Don't be killed by the divine bird. Ji Tianxing heard what he said, and his eyes became even more gloomy. After leaving the heaven-punishing palace, he walked toward the depths of the palace expressionlessly. On the way, he found a guard in black armor and asked him about the location of the Golden Sun Palace. The guard's expression suddenly changed, revealing a strong sense of dread. However, the guard still showed him the way and patted him on the shoulder. He sighed and said, Brother, did you offend General Dianxing? Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked, What do you mean? The guard just shook his head and did not explain anything. He quickly walked away. Ji Tianxing was full of doubts and walked toward the Golden Sun Palace. 15 minutes later, he arrived at the gate of the Golden Sun Palace. This magnificent palace was located in the deepest part of the palace complex. It was quiet all around. There were only a few guards in black armor standing guard. No one was moving around. Ji Tianxing arrived in front of the gate and explained his purpose to the guards at the gate. The guards hurriedly opened the door and watched him enter the palace with sympathetic or gloating eyes. The Golden Sun Palace looked sacred from the outside, but the inside was dark. As soon as Ji Tianxing entered the palace, he felt a powerful true god-level array. It was emitting terrifying energy waves. He released his divine sense and immediately saw the situation in the palace. He saw that in the palace, which was thousands of feet wide, there was a stone platform that was hundreds of feet tall. It almost occupied the entire palace. The black and red stone platform was engraved with divine array patterns. It was covered with a layer of dark red light. The inside of the stone platform was sunken like a huge abyss. There were thousands of dark red light pillars that intersected like ropes, forming a huge net. Ji Tianxing stepped toward the high platform and was about to use his divine sense to explore the situation in the abyss. At this moment, a deafening roar suddenly sounded from the abyss. Roar! It was clearly the sound of a bird, but it was like the roar of a divine dragon. It contained a terrifying aura. At the same time, a pair of huge golden eyes slowly opened in the abyss. The terrifying sound waves reverberated in the main hall, shaking the hall and causing the red light to explode. The black armored guards guarding outside the main hall also felt a great pressure despite the thick palace walls and the array. Immediately, they all revealed looks of fear. Alas, it seems that kid is finished. Poor guy. He was probably torn to pieces by the divine bird. Tisk ta. He was unlucky. The black armored guards discussed for a while and quickly returned to normal as if nothing had happened. Chapter 2564. In the gloomy hall, Ji Tianxing stood at the edge of the high platform and looked down at the abyss below him. There was a huge golden figure in the abyss that was enveloped by a dark red light. It was a golden divine bird that was as big as a mountain. It stretched its long neck and raised its head high. It had a sharp beak and a golden crest on its head. Its feathers were like golden dragon scales that glowed with a dark golden light. Its huge golden eyes stared at Ji Tianxing. There was no emotion in its eyes. They were filled with coldness. Ji Tianxing and the golden divine bird looked at each other in silence. However, the abyss's entrance was sealed by the red light, so the golden divine bird could not rush out. If not for this, the golden divine bird would have opened its beak and torn Ji Tianxing to pieces. Even so, the golden divine bird could still unleash a terrifying power that could penetrate the seal of the array and release powerful attacks. In the past few years, more than 2,000 heaven punishing guards had been killed or injured in this way. After a while, Ji Tianxing took out the black pouch and slowly extended it into the abyss. The golden divine bird's eyes changed. It was quickly accumulating anger and killing intent. Its emotions gradually became irritable. It started to accumulate violent power, and was ready to kill Ji Tianxing. To it, the black pouch and the golden sun rock represented hatred and humiliation. However, something that the golden divine bird did not expect happened. Ji Tianxing flipped his palm, and a bright golden divine fire burned in his palm. The black pouch was immediately burned to ashes. Even the golden sun rock was burned into lava and was quickly refined by him. This scene stunned the golden divine bird. Deep confusion flashed through its eyes. It could see that this heaven-punishing guard was different from the others. He was very strange. Other than that, it could not see anything else. Therefore, it glared at Ji Tianxing fiercely and opened its beak to chirp a few times. The piercing sound waves reverberated in the main hall. Ji Tianxing did not understand the language of the divine bird, so he did not react. His eyes glowed with golden light as he stared at the abyss without blinking. He was observing the red light as he studied the sealing divine formation. Under his divine eyes, the secrets of the sealing divine formation were quickly exposed. This was a true god-level formation that contained the unique power of the Heaven Punisher race. Its structure was extremely complicated. After 100 breaths of time, Ji Tianxing understood the structure of the array formation. He formed a hand seal and waved his palms, shooting out dozens of golden lights into the grand formation. He began to break the seal. However, the golden divine bird did not understand what he was trying to do. Seeing Ji Tianxing cast a divine spell, it instinctively sensed danger and was instantly enraged. It suddenly spread its huge wings, and a golden light burst out from its body. Boom! A terrifying golden hurricane erupted from the abyss and soared into the sky. Even though the golden hurricane was blocked by the countless strands of red light. However, a portion of its power still passed through the sealing divine formation and attacked Ji Tianxing. Swish! 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 More than a dozen golden fragments stabbed toward Ji Tianxing like sharp blades, aiming for his vital points. Ji Tianxing was already prepared. He calmly raised his right palm and swept it toward the golden fragments. Bam! 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 A series of muffled sounds rang out as the golden fragments were instantly reduced to dust. Seeing this, the golden divine bird was stunned. Its eyes were filled with shock. It was even more certain that there was something wrong with this heaven punisher. Chirp! 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 The golden divine bird let out a low chirp as if questioning Ji Tianxing's identity and intentions. Ji Tianxing ignored it and focused on breaking the divine formation. Half an hour passed without him noticing. The golden divine bird had run out of patience and had stopped chirping. It remained alert and stared sharply at Ji Tianxing, waiting to see what would happen. Finally, Ji Tianxing broke the divine formation and ended his spell. Swish! 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 The thousands of red lights that sealed the entrance to the abyss melted like snow. The abyss had lost its shackles. The divine bird that had been imprisoned for many years finally saw the light of escape. Its body shrank back as it accumulated enough power to destroy heaven and earth. Its body emitted a dark golden glow. In the next moment, it shot out of the abyss like an arrow released from a bow. This charge was earth-shattering and unstoppable. Not to mention the roof of the main hall. Even a mountain range would be smashed into powder by it. However, the golden divine bird had just charged out of the abyss and stuck its neck out. Its body was still in the abyss. Ji Tianxing, who was thousands of times smaller than it, casually raised his palm and pressed it down. Instantly, a bright golden palm pressed down from the sky and covered the entire entrance to the abyss. Bam! There was no doubt that the golden divine bird was slapped into the abyss by the giant golden palm and retreated back inside. A deafening sound reverberated in the palace, causing the entire palace to shake. Such an earth-shattering commotion caused the guards outside the hall to dodge repeatedly, and their expressions were filled with shock and fear. Oh my God! Is that divine bird crazy? Haha. Such a terrifying commotion. Looks like that brat died without leaving even a trace. Sigh, poor guy. He can actually make the divine bird so violent. He's quite capable. A few guards communicated telepathically and discussed for a while. Then peace was restored. They were already used to such situations. There was no way they would enter the palace to check out the situation. There was no need, and they did not have the guts. However, the scene in the palace was completely different from what the guards had imagined. Ji Tianqing stood calmly above the abyss, looking down at the divine bird in the abyss. The divine bird was already severely injured and weak. After being slapped back into the abyss by Ji Tianqing, its strength was even weaker. The golden glow on its body also dimmed. It curled up and raised its head unyieldingly. It glared at Ji Tianqing with rage. Chirp! Chirp chirp! Its sharp beak opened and closed as it questioned Ji Tianqing sternly. Ji Tianqing did not answer. Instead, his spirit left his body and returned to his body. Swoosh! There was a flash of light, and he returned to his original appearance. Seeing this, the golden divine bird was stunned. It looked at Ji Tianqing in shock. It could not understand how a black-armored guard of the Heaven Punisher race could suddenly transform into a handsome human in a white robe. That's right. The golden divine bird could recognize that Ji Tianqing was a human. In the ancient times, the golden divine bird had met an almighty of the human race and even received guidance from the almighty of the human race. Because of this, the golden divine bird gradually realized that the human youth before it had come to Gold Sun Palace with an ulterior motive. Most importantly, the human youth had reached the true immortal realm. His strength was unfathomable. It could not defeat him. Chapter 2565. The golden divine bird gradually calmed down and stopped trying to escape. Ji Tianqing then spoke calmly. The golden roc is a top divine bird from the ancient times. Its bloodline is extremely noble, second only to the divine dragon and the phoenix. Until now, there are very few golden rocs left. There might not even be 10 of them in all 3,000 worlds. And you are one of them. Ji Tianqing spoke calmly, as if he was talking to himself. He looked down at the golden roc in the abyss and said, "If you can understand the human language, perhaps we can talk." The golden roc's golden eyes were filled with shock. It racked its brain for a long time before it had a clue. It used its divine consciousness to say, "The human race. I've seen them before, so I can understand a little." It spoke the human language, but it was a little shaky and stuttering. "That's good." Ji Tianqing nodded in satisfaction and asked, "Why are you imprisoned here? Tell me your background and story." At the mention of this, the golden roc's eyes flashed with hatred. It used its divine consciousness to reply, "I have always been on Purple Cloud Planet, and was good friends with Heavenly Venerable Zi Shao. Together, we protected the people of Purple Cloud Planet. 50 years ago, the heaven-punishing race's fleet attacked Purple Cloud Planet." The golden roc told Ji Tianqing about its identity and experience. Ji Tianqing then knew that the golden roc was the guardian divine beast of Purple Cloud Planet. When Purple Cloud Planet was occupied by the heaven-punishing race's army, Heavenly Venerable Zi Shao was besieged by the fleet and died. The golden roc was also severely injured but luckily survived. However, it was captured by the Southern Conquering Marshal and imprisoned here. Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a cold smile as he muttered to himself, "The Southern Conquering Marshal is not stupid. He actually recognized you as the ancient divine bird, the golden roc, and imprisoned you here. It seems that he wants to subdue you and make you his beast pet and mount." The golden roc nodded slightly and said, "He did not kill me or save me, but he kept sending people to send me golden sunstones to maintain my strength and life. He wants to humiliate me, destroy my will, and force me to submit." Ji Tianqing shook his head and explained. No, it's not as troublesome as you think. Now that you're heavily injured and on the verge of death, it's very easy for him to subdue you. I only need to use the Heaven Punisher's soul-controlling secret technique to control your divine soul. However, after he took over Zixiao Star, he had more important things to do in person. He had no time to deal with you. A few years ago, he was severely injured and had to flee back to the Purple Cloud Star. All these years, he's been hiding in the Violet Heaven Cave in seclusion to recuperate, so he has no time to subdue you. However, he would come out of seclusion in another month. At that time, you will definitely be controlled by him and become a puppet of the Heaven Punisher race. The golden rock narrowed its eyes, revealing a look of resentment. It growled, if that's the case, I'd rather die. Ji Tianqing glanced at it and said with a faint smile, you didn't disgrace the integrity of the Golden Rock clan, but why do you only want to die? Have you never thought that if you live, Marshal Nan will die? What do you mean? The Golden Rock's eyes widened as it stared at Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing did not answer. He continued to ask, Golden Rock, do you want revenge? Yes. The Golden Rock nodded without hesitation and said angrily, this is the only belief that keeps me alive. As long as I can take revenge and kill Marshal Nan, I won't hesitate even if I have to give up my life. Very good. Ji Tianqing nodded in satisfaction and said, then I'll give you a chance to take revenge. Let's work together. Before he could finish, the Golden Rock looked at him warily and asked, what do you want to do? Ji Tianqing smiled and said, just like you, I was persecuted by the Heaven Punisher race. Now, I'm here to take revenge. The Golden Rock finally understood. So, you pretended to be a Heaven Punisher race guard and sneaked into the Heaven Punisher Divine Palace to get close to me? You think too much. Ji Tianqing rolled his eyes at the Golden Rock and said calmly, you weren't part of my plan. It was just an accident that I met you. Of course, this accident increased the success rate of my plan. The Golden Rock was still hesitant and asked, why should I believe you? Maybe you're Marshal Nan's lackey and the Heaven Punisher race's accomplice? Ji Tianqing sneered disdainfully and said, Golden Rock, you don't have the right to choose. If you don't believe me, I'll restore the seal now and leave. I'll pretend you never saw me. As he spoke, Ji Tianqing raised his hand and was about to cast a spell to restore the sealing divine array. The Golden Rock immediately became anxious and shouted, stop. Let me think about it. Ji Tianqing was not moved at all. Golden light shot out from his palms as he started to cast a spell. The Golden Rock became even more anxious. After struggling for a while, it quickly shouted, stop. I agree with you. Ji Tianqing stopped and said indifferently, that's a wise decision. Otherwise, I'd have to waste my time talking to you. The Golden Rock was depressed. It could not see through Ji Tianqing and was even more afraid of him. After a moment of silence, the Golden Rock tried to ask, I can work with you, but you have to tell me, what do you plan to do? Ji Tianqing said calmly, Marshal Nan is hiding in the Purple Heaven Cave to heal. The Purple Heaven Cave is heavily guarded, so we can't kill our way in. Therefore, we can only wait patiently for a month. When the Myriad Kingdom God Conference starts, we'll take action. At that time, I'll create chaos outside and kill the Heaven Punisher experts. You'll kill your way out of the Gold Sun Palace and find a chance to sneak up on Marshal Nan. We'll work together. The Golden Rock was stunned. This is your plan? Only the two of us dare to fight Marshal Nan and hundreds of Heaven Punisher race martial gods? I thought you had a foolproof plan and many helpers. Are you crazy? Ji Tianqing said expressionlessly. It's about quantity, not quantity. If you're afraid of death, then forget it. What a joke. The Golden Rock was furious. It roared in a deep voice. The Golden Rock race has never had anyone who is afraid of death. Ji Tianqing nodded and said, if that's the case, then it's decided. The Golden Rock realized that it had been provoked, but it could not change its mind. Therefore, it could only remind Qin Haodong. Your plan is too reckless. I'm severely injured now and can't use much combat strength. How can I kill Marshal Nan? Ji Tianqing took out a large pile of dawn stones from his spatial ring and threw them in front of the Golden Rock. You still have a month. Use these divine stones to heal your injuries. It doesn't matter how much you can recover. After all, you're not the main force to assassinate Marshal Nan. The golden rock was speechless again. It hesitated for a moment before accepting the pile of pitch-black dawn stones. All right, since I'm going to die anyway, I'll believe you this time. Next, I'll go into seclusion to heal. I'll try my best to recover my injuries and strength. Chapter 2566. After comforting the golden rock, Ji Tianqing started to cast a spell to restore the ceiling formation. Xiao Sui dream Xiao Sui A. The golden rock understood his intention and did not try to stop him. After all, there would be other heaven punishing guards coming to deliver the golden sunstones in the next month. The ceiling formation had to be restored to its original state, so that no one would notice anything amiss. Of course, with Ji Tianqing's strength and methods, it was easy for him to do something to the ceiling formation. On the surface, there seemed to be nothing wrong with the ceiling divine formation. But in reality, Ji Tianqing told the golden rock how to open it. When the time was right, the golden rock could open the ceiling formation and rush out of the abyss. While he was casting the spell, the golden rock was still a little worried and asked 2 questions. What is your name? Will you be hiding in the heaven-punishing divine palace for the next month? Ji Tianqing did not hide anything and answered honestly, just call me Tianqing. I want to do something to the heaven-punishing divine palace, so that it will be easier for me to take action in a month. Also, I want to make a trip to the Zero mainland to create some chaos and distract the heaven-punishing race. The golden rock was relieved and nodded in agreement. That's more like it. I thought you were really reckless. Ji Tianqing did not reply and silently cast a divine technique. 15 minutes later, the ceiling formation was restored to its original state. Countless strands of dark red light formed a huge net that enveloped the entrance to the abyss. Ji Tianqing was about to turn and leave when he suddenly thought of something and stopped. With his back facing the abyss, he asked calmly, "After this is done, are you willing to leave with me? I have studied the 7th forefather's divine technique. It will definitely help you increase your strength and break through to the heaven god realm." The golden rock was stunned. After a moment of silence, it shook its head and said, "If the plan succeeds and the Southern Expedition Marshal is killed, I will definitely stay on the Purple Cloud Star to protect the billions of people. 20,000 years ago, when I broke through to the true God realm, I decided that I would never ascend. What divine realm? What heaven god realm? They are all meaningless to me." Ji Tianqing did not say anything else. His body flashed with golden light, and he turned back into a heaven-punishing guard and walked toward the palace door. A moment later, he stepped through the door and left the hall safely. The few black-armored guards guarding outside the main hall suddenly revealed a face full of shock, and their eyes widened in disbelief. It wasn't until Ji Tianqing was far away and his figure disappeared under the palace wall in the distance that everyone came back to their senses. Hiss, this guy actually didn't die. Are our eyes playing tricks on us? How could he still be alive? That's not right. The commotion in the main hall earlier was so terrifying, he would have been blasted into smithereens. A few black-armored guards gasped in shock, discussing with each other in shock. No one could understand what was going on. For the next few days, the heaven-punishing divine palace was very peaceful. Ji Tianqing used the identity of a black-armored guard to move around the heaven-punishing divine palace, placing array formation materials everywhere. With his strength and methods, if there were no true divinity powerhouses monitoring him, he would absolutely not be able to see any flaws. After 10 days, Ji Tianqing had secretly planted more than 500 seeds in every corner of the heaven-punishing divine palace. The so-called seeds were either sacred weapons, dawnstones, or powerful talismans. In short, they were all materials that could be used to form arrays. At the crucial moment, they could explode with destructive power and destroy the heaven-punishing divine palace. Furthermore, Ji Tianqing had a clear understanding of the situation in the heaven-punishing divine palace. Inside and outside the heaven-punishing divine palace, there were more than 10,000 heaven-punishing divine palace guards, and they were all martial sages. Furthermore, there were more than 700 martial gods. They were the personal guards of the captain of the guards, the captain of the ship, and Marshal Nanzheng. As for the true divinity realm powerhouse, there was only General Dianxing. After all, after reaching the true divinity realm, one would be able to activate the laws of heaven and earth and fly up to the upper world. There were only a few true divinities who were willing to stay in the mortal world and conquer the various stars. As such, the defensive power of the heaven-punishing divine palace could be said to be extremely strong. If Ji Tianxing acted rashly, he would definitely be in a desperate situation and his life would be in danger. He had chosen to endure. He would wait until a month later, when the myriad countries' gods gathering opened, to find a way to kill Marshal Nanzheng. As long as he killed Marshal Nanzheng, the other martial gods and martial sages would not be a concern. On the 12th night, Ji Tianxing quietly left the heaven-punishing divine palace. He passed through the white sea of clouds and took out the Tianxing battleship. Bai Long was already bored from waiting. He immediately steered the battleship and headed straight for the Zero mainland. The heaven-punishing divine palace was above the sea of clouds, and it was very far from the Zero mainland. Even with the speed of the Tianxing battleship, it would take 2 days to reach the Zero mainland. During the journey, Bai Long asked Ji Tianxing, "Master, Marshal Nanzheng is not in the heaven-punishing divine palace. Why don't you take this opportunity to destroy the entire heaven-punishing divine palace?" Ji Tianxing said earnestly, "If we destroy the heaven-punishing divine palace, the heaven-punishing divine palace can be rebuilt. If we kill a few hundred martial gods from the heaven-punishing divine palace, they will have more martial gods to reinforce them. Only by patiently waiting for the right time to kill Marshal Nanzheng can we disrupt the heaven-punishing divine palace's plans and prevent them from dominating the entire Purple Cloud Galaxy. After all, there are countless martial gods, but only 1 in 10,000 true god experts." Bai Long nodded to indicate that he understood. Then he asked in confusion, "Since that is the case, we can just hide in the heaven-punishing divine palace. Why do we still need to go to the Zero mainland?" Ji Tianxing explained calmly, "Master has already investigated. There are as many as 2,000 martial gods stationed in the Purple Cloud Galaxy. 1/3 of them are guarding the heaven-punishing divine palace. The remaining martial gods are scattered across the various continents. The heaven-punishing divine palace has tight defenses. With Marshal Nanzheng there, it will be very difficult to deal with. Thus, Master can only send you to the Zero mainland and create as much chaos as possible to attract a large number of martial gods there. The fewer martial gods guarding the heaven-punishing divine palace, the higher the chances of Master assassinating Marshal Nanzheng." Bai Long was stunned. Then he smiled bitterly and said, "This disciple understands. To put it bluntly, you want us to be cannon fodder and attract their firepower?" Bai Long originally thought that Ji Tianxing would console him and encourage him. However, to his surprise, Ji Tianxing nodded expressionlessly and said, "Yes, it's good that you understand." PFFF. Bai Long almost vomited blood. He covered his chest with one hand and pretended to be heartbroken. He said in an aggrieved manner, "Master, can't you at least say a few words of comfort? Even if it's just to trick me, it's fine. You are so straightforward. You have really hurt this disciple's heart." Ji Tianxing rolled his eyes at Bai Long and said unhappily, "Don't put on airs. How can you hide your little thoughts from Master? Actually, you have already guessed Master's plan. You are itching and looking forward to it. Isn't bringing 3 divine beasts to cause trouble what you are looking forward to the most? Don't deny it. Your heart is beating faster and your blood is flowing faster. You can't hold it in anymore." Bai Long did not feel embarrassed when his true thoughts were exposed. Instead, he laughed loudly and said, "Aya, Master knows me best. That's right. This disciple has been itching for a long time and is ready to go all out." Chapter 2567. Bai Long was not a law-abiding person. He had never been one. Xiaoruyao. To put it bluntly, this fellow was actually a warmonger. More than 1,000 years ago, Ji Tianxing had already seen through him. Ever since Bai Long had recovered to the martial god realm, he had not participated in any major battles. He had no place to use all kinds of schemes and tricks, so he had long been itching for a fight. He had even been despised by Qian Yu and Black Dragon for several years, because he had not participated in the battle against the Southern Marshal. Bai Long remembered it in his heart, and had always wanted to find an opportunity to prove himself. Otherwise, how could he convince the masses in the future? This time, he would go to the Zero Mainland to assassinate the Heaven Punisher and create chaos. This was the opportunity he had been dreaming of. 2 days passed quickly. The Tianqing battleship activated the invisibility divine array, and remained invisible as it landed in the middle of the Zero Mainland. Before this, Ji Tianqing had done his research and had a basic understanding of the Zero Mainland. This was the most prosperous continent on the Purple Cloud Star. There were 5 divine kingdoms, more than 20 billion people, and dozens of races. After the Heaven Punisher had occupied the Purple Cloud Star, most of the captains and guards had been stationed on this continent. After several years of development, the Zero Mainland had already settled down. Now that the Heaven Punisher had control of the situation, no one dared to resist. The Tianqing battleship landed near the capital of the Fallen Star Divine Kingdom. Coincidentally, the Fallen Star Divine Kingdom was holding a grand ceremony. The Heaven Punisher had enslaved the Divine Kingdom for 6 years, and wanted to select a group of experts from the slaves to train as loyal lackeys. The experts who passed the test would have their divine souls controlled by the Heaven Punisher and become loyal puppets. Moreover, these powerhouses were already very famous in the martial arts world, and had a lot of commanding power. Once they became the lackeys of the Heaven Punisher, they would be able to better manage the people of the Divine Kingdom. A huge arena was built in the capital. Hundreds of thousands of commoners had gathered around the arena to watch the selection. A total of several hundred martial Dao experts participated in the selection. After many rounds of elimination, only 20 experts would remain. In addition, more than 30 martial god realm captains personally oversaw the arena. It was currently evening, and the blood-red sun was about to set. Ji Tianqing and Bai Long disguised themselves and sneaked into the capital city, rushing to the arena in the city. When they arrived at the bottom of the arena, the two of them observed for a moment. After figuring out the situation, the two of them acted decisively. In the arena, the two martial saints were fighting fiercely. Light and shadows filled the sky as they fought, causing countless people to cheer and cheer. More than 30 silver-armored captains were scattered around the arena, watching this scene with indifferent expressions. Right at this moment, a shocking sword light suddenly lit up in the crowd below the arena. Chua! The dazzling golden sword over 10,000 feet in length slashed toward the dozen or so captains on the eastern side of the arena with the power to destroy all things. The sudden turn of events scared the hundreds of thousands of people out of their wits. The several hundred black-armored guards realized that something was amiss and wanted to intervene, but it was already too late. The dozen or so captains in the arena did not guard against anyone causing trouble. By the time they realized that danger was approaching, it was too late to avoid it. Kaboom! With a deafening explosion, the huge sword split the wide ring into 2 halves. 8 captains in silver armor were swept by the sword light. They let out shrill screams as their flesh and blood splattered all over the sky. The other captains in silver armor were also sent flying by the violent sword chi and fell into the ruins in a sorry state. The huge arena was destroyed on the spot. The 2 martial saints who were fighting fiercely were also killed by the sword chi. The powerful shock wave carried countless fragments of the sword chi and splashed in all directions. Instantly, the area within 100 miles was in chaos. The sky was also covered by the dazzling golden light. The hundreds of thousands of people who were watching screamed in horror and despair. They panicked and fled in all directions. Panic spread and the people were screaming. The 20 or so captains in silver armor, who were lucky enough to survive, locked onto the attacker and charged toward the white-robed young man with their swords and sabers. Chua! 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 The captains swung their swords and sabers and unleashed their strongest power. They slashed out dark red light that covered the sky and earth. Thousands of light blades rained down like a torrential downpour, covering the area within a 100-mile radius. In this area, other than the white-robed young man, there were hundreds of thousands of people who could not escape in time. However, to the captains of the Heaven Punishers, these hundreds of thousands of people were slaves. Their lives were worse than pigs and dogs. As long as they could kill the white-robed young man, so what if they destroyed the entire capital city? Boom, 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 boom. The red light blades that covered the sky and earth struck the white-robed young man. There was a deafening explosion. A terrifying dark red shockwave spread out in all directions. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed on the spot. They were all reduced to dust. However, the white-robed young man stood in his original spot calmly. He did not even take half a step back. Even though he had used his physical body to withstand the attacks of the captains, he was not injured at all. Oh my God! Is that guy a monster? Are our eyes playing tricks on us? How can he be safe and sound? It must be an illusion. He must have used an illusion technique. Everyone, don't panic. Surround this place and kill him together. No matter who he is, he will definitely die. The 28 captains of the silver-armored captains shouted one after another. Then they spread out and formed a 200-mile circle around the white-robed young man. The white-robed young man was still calm. He raised his left hand expressionlessly and slapped out a few mountain-sized dragon and elephant shadows. He waved the black sword in his right hand and slashed out hundreds of dazzling golden sword radiances. Bam! 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 The dragon and elephant shadows descended from the sky and slammed into the 10 captains of the silver-armored captains. The area within a 100-mile radius was reduced to ruins. The 10 captains were killed on the spot. Their bodies were smashed into a rain of blood. Hundreds of dazzling golden sword radiances enveloped the bodies of the dozen captains like a rain of arrows. With a series of sizzling sounds, the burly bodies of the silver-armored captains were pierced and sliced into pieces by the sword radiances. Thus, 24 of the 28 captains died on the spot. They all died without a complete corpse. Their bodies were reduced to dust. The remaining 4 captains who were lucky enough to survive were also severely injured. They turned around and fled in horror. They could tell that the white-robed young man was not a martial god. He was an unfathomable and extremely powerful true god expert. Only General Dianxing and the Southern Expedition Marshal could deal with this person. Therefore, the 4 captains fled in different directions. They rushed into the sky in a panic. They wanted to escape from the fallen star's divine kingdom and report back to the heaven-punishing divine palace immediately. However, as soon as the 4 captains fled into the sky, they were intercepted and killed. The white-robed young man charged over with a sword. He smashed one of the captains with a punch and pierced another captain's chest with a sword. The other 2 captains were also stopped by a handsome young man with a demonic temperament. Hey, where are you running to? Take my heaven-destroying, earth-destroying fist. The devilish young man shouted angrily. He raised his fists and punched at the 2 captains. Chapter 2568. Bam, 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 bam. 2 deafening explosions rang out. The 2 captains in silver armor were smashed into pieces on the spot by the huge white dragon claw. Blood rained down from the sky. It was a ghastly sight under the setting sun. At this point, more than 30 captains on the battlefield were all dead. There were only a few thousand black-armored guards left. Many of them had died or were injured. They were in a dilemma. Everyone was filled with fear as they fled into the distance with horrified expressions. Should they flee from the capital city? They did not dare to do so. They were afraid that they would be punished. Should they charge forward and attack the white-robed young man and the strange young man? They did not dare to do so. Hence, they could only surround the ruins. They held their swords and sabers and were on guard. Taking advantage of this opportunity, hundreds of thousands of people fled the ruins in all directions. The place quieted down. Ji Tianxing and Bai Long flew into the sky and looked down at the people calmly. I'll give you 1 day to call all the experts in the fallen star's holy kingdom here. Ji Tianxing's face was cold as he shouted sternly. His deep voice reverberated in the surroundings. The black-armored guards turned pale and were filled with fear. Bai Long sneered and shouted proudly, "Trash from the Heaven Punisher tribe. None of you can fight. I'll wait for you here for 1 day. Call all your men here so that I can kill all of you in one go. Remember, you only have 1 day. I won't wait for you after that." Like Ji Tianxing, Bai Long spoke in the Heaven Punisher tribe's language. The thousands of guards around the ruins heard him clearly. Immediately, everyone was filled with grief and indignation, shame and anger. However, they were weak and did not dare to act rashly. Otherwise, they would be killed by Bai Long's palm. After weighing the pros and cons, the black armored guards chose to bear with it. Many guard captains took out their communication jade slips and sent out messages one after another. Soon, the news of what had happened in the capital city spread to all parts of the Fallen Star's Holy Kingdom. The captains of the various forces and cities rushed to the capital city as fast as they could. Half an hour later, the few experts guarding the capital city's imperial palace led a large group of guards to the battlefield in the capital city. There were a total of 6 captains in the martial god realm. All of them were at LV4 or LV5 of the martial god realm. They were the real rulers of the Fallen Star's divine nation. They had been stationed in the imperial palace and controlled several great empires in the divine nation. Normally, they wouldn't show up unless something major happened. This included the selection of leaders from the slaves, and they were not present. However, the news of the arena being destroyed and more than 30 captains being killed alarmed all of them. The 6 captains led 300 guards and rushed to the scene aggressively. Their killing intent soared to the sky. However, what awaited them was death. White Dragon had long been unable to restrain his murderous intent, and he was rubbing his fists. When everyone arrived at the scene, he did not give the other party a chance to speak at all. He waved his hand and used his ultimate technique. Wild Dragon goes to sea. The White Dragon waved its palms, releasing a golden light that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. It condensed into 9 huge golden dragons that charged towards the 6 captains and the 300 guards. Boom, 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 boom. After a series of loud explosions, more than half of the 300 guards were killed. 4 of the 6 captains were killed in an instant. The other 2 were severely injured and fell into the ruins. Ji Tianxing was about to draw his sword when White Dragon beat him to it. He laughed and said, "Master, these nobodies are not worthy of your attention. Just leave them to me." As he spoke, White Dragon dashed out like an aurora and punched out a sky full of light shadows. With another series of muffled sounds, the 2 captains and over 100 guards were quickly turned into dregs by the White Dragon. The destructive shockwave swept through the entire city. The bustling city within a radius of 300 miles was turned into ruins. Smoke and dust rose everywhere. Even among the thousands of guards, a few hundred of them were killed on the spot. The survivors fled the ruins in a panic and hid a few hundred miles away. They did not dare to come any closer. White Dragon flew up into the sky and returned to Ji Tianxing's side. "Master, our methods are too violent and overbearing. Do you think the others will dare to come?" White Dragon was very worried. He and Ji Tianxing's methods were too powerful. What if they scared the other experts of the Heaven Punisher? If the other captains did not dare to come, wouldn't he and Ji Tianxing have waited for nothing? Ji Tianxing shook his head and said with certainty, "Don't worry. The other captains will definitely come. This is the Heaven Punisher's territory. Even if they know that they are going to die, they will not let the Heaven Punisher suffer such humiliation." White Dragon was immediately relieved. He said expectantly, "That's great. Previously, we were very passive in the 5 elements world. We were constantly invaded by the Heaven Punisher. It was really frustrating. Now that we are in the Heaven Punisher's territory, we can do whatever we want and kill them. This feels so good." Ji Tianxing said expressionlessly, "It's better to enjoy together than to enjoy alone." Qianyu, Black Dragon and Lan Kuan are also very excited. They are all saying that they want to help you. White Dragon's expression immediately changed. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Master, that won't do. This kind of limelight. Bah, this kind of difficult and dangerous thing. Of course I will do it with Master. Qianyu and Black Dragon are still very young. How can we let them take such a risk?" A smile flashed across Ji Tianxing's eyes, and he ignored White Dragon. Time passed quietly. The sun quickly set behind the mountains and night fell. Only Ji Tianxing and White Dragon were in the ruins within a 300-mile radius. Around the ruins, there were thousands of black armored guards standing guard. There were also people constantly sending messages. The more than 1 million survivors had long since fled in all directions, far away from this place. The night wind blew, stirring up the sand on the ground and filling the night sky. The atmosphere was exceptionally bleak. Ji Tianqing stood in the sky with his eyes closed. He was not in a hurry. White Dragon, on the other hand, was looking around. His expression was anxious and impatient. Every once in a while he would even mutter to himself, "Hey, why are these bastards hiding like turtles? Why don't they show up now? My sword has been thirsting for blood for a long time. Why haven't the bastards of the Heaven Punishers come to their deaths yet?" For the entire night, there was no movement around the ruins. The White Dragon was bored of waiting, so it simply lay down in the sky, humming a little tune, and closed its eyes to rest. It had a carefree attitude. Finally, at noon the next day, the sun was high in the sky, and a strong wind blew around the ruins. Sand and stones flew everywhere. One after another, tall figures rushed over from all directions. Further away, there were many black heaven-punishing battleships. They were ferocious as they approached. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing opened his eyes. He drew the sword of burial of heaven with his right hand. White Dragon also stood up with a whoosh. He smiled with anticipation. "Ha ha! My long wait was not in vain. The dishes are finally served. I'm going to use my 40-meter long sword to connect their flesh and blood and fill the sky with blood." Chapter 2569. There were more than 40 Heaven Punisher experts who had rushed to the ruins of the capital city. They were all captains at the martial god realm. In addition, there were more than 40 battleships carrying more than 3,000 black armored guards. The martial gods and the battleships had all arrived within a day. However, they had already contacted each other and discussed a strategy. No one acted alone. They waited for the others to arrive before joining forces and surrounding the ruins. Clang, 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 clang. More than 40 battleships stopped in the sky around the ruins. They opened their side armor and revealed rows of cannons. The black cannons were aimed at Ji Tianqing and Bai Long, who were in the middle of the ruins. At the same time, more than 40 captains at the martial god realm held swords, sabers, and spears. They roared and charged. "Kill them! Despicable commoners, how dare you resist? Go to hell! Those who oppose the Heaven Punisher tribe will be doomed." As they roared, more than 40 captains shone with red light. They slashed out light blades that covered the sky. Instantly, thousands of light blades covered the sky, covering the light of the scorching sun. Ji Tianqing and Bai Long were under the light blades. They were surrounded by a rain of arrows, and there was nowhere for them to hide. However, the two of them did not plan to hide. Ji Tianqing's eyes turned cold. His body lit up with golden light, and he instantly turned into a giant that was 100 feet tall. He ignored the attacks from the captains. He held the huge sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed at the two captains valiantly. Bang, 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 bang. More than 100 dark red light blades hit him, and there was a series of loud bangs. However, the light blades collapsed and he was not injured at all. He did not even lose a hair. However, the two giant swords that he had slashed out had locked onto the two captains. They could not escape. Boom. Crack. The two captains were killed on the spot. Their bodies exploded into dust and blood rained down. This scene shocked many of the captains. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Their eyes widened, revealing a deep sense of fear. Ji Tianqing did not stop. His body turned into a golden phantom and charged into the crowd. He was like a ferocious tiger in a flock of sheep. He held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands and slashed wildly. His aura was violent, his posture was domineering, and his moves were unparalleled and unstoppable. None of the captains could withstand even one of his attacks. Anyone who was touched by the sword of burial of heaven, or touched by the sword light, would be sent flying. In light cases, their limbs would be severed, while in heavy cases, their bodies would disintegrate and they would die on the spot. At this moment, Ji Tianqing was like a golden whirlwind. Everywhere he went, a rain of blood would be swept up. He was extremely fierce. On the other side, Bai Long's body was also emitting white light. Holding the domineering green dragon crescent blade, he ferociously charged into the crowd. Wherever he went, saber light splattered and divine power overflowed like a surging torrent. The captains whose auras were locked onto by him were often chopped into pieces by the green dragon crescent blade in less than 3 moves. Both the master and disciple were high-spirited and full of fighting spirit. More than 40 captains at the martial god realm were forced into a panic. They retreated in fear and trepidation. Just now their morale was high, but now they were like stray dogs. They could only run and wail. The 40 or so warships around the ruins had originally formed an encirclement to prevent Ji Tianxing and Bai Long from escaping. The warships would not fire unless it was a critical moment. Many of the captains wanted to kill Ji Tianxing and Bai Long with their own hands and cut them into pieces. However, the situation in front of them was shocking and unbelievable. The 40 or so warships hesitated for a long time before finally making up their minds and firing. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, earth-shattering dark red pillars of light blasted toward the ruined battlefield with destructive power. Ji Tianxing was chasing after 2 captains, but he was hit by hundreds of pillars of light. Bang, bang, bang. With muffled sounds, he was shaken until his entire body trembled and he retreated thousands of feet. Even so, he was not injured. His unparalleled defense was on full display. His body lit up with golden light, forming a huge vortex. The dark red pillars of light that blasted from all directions were swallowed by the golden vortex and quickly dissolved. He was not affected by the warship's bombardment at all, and continued to chase after the 2 captains with his sword. On the other side, Bai Long was also hit by dozens of dark red pillars of light and flew back in a sorry state. However, he had also neutralized most of the power and was not injured. Damn it! I'll turn you into scrap metal immediately. Bai Long spat. He held the green dragon crescent blade with both hands and rushed out of the ruins in a flash. He arrived above a warship. Open! Bai Long roared like a bell. He held the green dragon crescent blade with both hands and slashed down with all his might. Suddenly, the blade emitted a bright golden light and condensed into a giant blade that was thousands of feet long. Boom! Crack! The giant golden blade slashed down fiercely. The thousands of feet long warship was instantly cut in half and countless pieces flew out. More than 100 black-armored heaven-punishing guards were immediately flung out and scattered in the sky. Whoosh! 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 Bai Long swung the green dragon crescent blade again and again. Soon, the black-armored guards were cut into pieces. After quickly finishing off one warship, he attacked another warship with his blade. The warship not far away saw Bai Long slash the warship in half with his blade and immediately turned around and fled in fright. Bai Long teleported and chased after it. He raised his blade and slashed down. Boom! Crack! The second warship was also cut in half. Then the third, fourth, fifth one warship after another was destroyed by the green dragon crescent blade. Bai Long was so excited that he did not care that his body was covered in the blood of the heaven punishers. He was like an evil god, surrounded by endless murderous intent. However, compared to Ji Tianxing, he was not terrifying and ferocious enough. His aura was also not domineering enough. Ji Tianxing, who was thousands of feet tall, was like an invincible god of war. He rampaged through the battlefield and crushed everything. Even if more than 30 captains surrounded him, they could not trap him, let alone injure him. On the contrary, every time he slashed out with his sword, he would take the life of a captain. Blood splattered everywhere. This battle, which had a great disparity in numbers, only lasted for 15 minutes before it ended. The Heaven Punishers could not believe the final result. They were shocked and terrified. More than 2,000 members of the Heaven Punisher race against 2 humans. In the end, all the Heaven Punishers were killed. More than 40 warships were also destroyed. However, Ji Tianxing and Bai Long were not injured. This was simply an unprecedented and shocking feat. When the light and the rain of blood dissipated, Ji Tianxing and Bai Long had already left. The 2 of them left the Fallen Star's divine nation as quickly as possible and headed for another divine nation. After all, they had killed 80% of the Heaven Punishers guarding the Fallen Star's divine nation. This earth-shattering battle with such a tragic result would soon alert the Heaven Punishing Divine Palace. Moreover, the other divine nations on the Zero mainland would also receive the news. As long as the rulers of those divine nations were not stupid, they would definitely come up with a countermeasure and put in all their effort to defend themselves. Ji Tianqing wanted to create chaos before the news spread. Chapter 2570. Changhai Holy Kingdom was the closest to Fallen Star's Holy Kingdom. Bai Long steered the battleship and took 2 days to reach Changhai Holy Kingdom. By then, Changhai Holy Kingdom had already received the news from Fallen Star's Holy Kingdom. The capital city had been destroyed and turned into ruins. More than 80 martial god realm captains, and close to 2,000 martial sage realm warriors had been killed. Such shocking news caused a huge commotion in the Changhai Divine Nation. Of course, it was not just Changhai Holy Kingdom. The other 2 holy kingdoms had also received the news. As such, the entire Zero mainland was in a state of panic. The captains and warriors of the Heaven Punisher tribe were all in danger. No one knew when those 2 mysterious outsider experts would descend upon them. When Tianqing's battleship reached holy capital of Changhai Holy Kingdom, more than 50 martial god realm captains had gathered in the city to discuss countermeasures. Holy Capital already had more than 1,000 martial sage realm black armor guards. Now that they had mobilized more than 1,000 martial sage realm black armor guards from the surrounding cities, the total number of black armor guards had reached 2,000. Even so, the captains were still afraid and trembling in fear. In the dazzling Holy Palace, the 50 captains had been discussing for half a day, but they were unable to come up with a perfect plan. Someone suggested that they should leave Changhai Holy Kingdom and lie low for a while. This suggestion was immediately rejected by the captains. Zero mainland and the entire Purple Cloud Star were the Heaven Punisher tribe's territory. How could they give up the entire Holy Kingdom just because of 2 foreign tribe elites? Wouldn't this be a laughingstock that would go down in history for 1,000 years? Most of the captains agreed that they could not retreat for the sake of the Heaven Punisher tribe's dignity and honor. They had to gather all the captains in Holy Capital and set up an inescapable trap inside and outside Holy Capital to wait for the other party to come and die. Everyone knew that Changhai Holy Kingdom was the closest to Fallen Star's Holy Kingdom and would most likely become the next target of the foreign tribe elites. As such, after the captains had come up with a plan, they immediately carried it out. Other than the 4 most powerful captains guarding the Holy Palace, the rest of the captains rushed to the surroundings of Holy Capital to set up holy arrays and traps. After a day of work, the captains set up 12 arrays in Holy Capital. 6 of them were defensive arrays and 6 of them were extremely powerful holy arrays. Moreover, close to 2,000 black armored guards were also on standby, maintaining a state of alert at all times. However, after everyone spent the night in a tense atmosphere, the inside and outside of Fairy's capital remained calm. The expected attacks and massacres did not come. In the dead of night, the night sky was as dark as ink, shrouded by thick dark clouds. Everything was silent between heaven and earth. An ordinary-looking captain in silver armor was cruising outside the divine capital with a pitch-black saber at his waist. He circled the 1,000-foot-tall city wall and walked alone in the dark night. Not only did they have to patrol the city walls, but they also had to investigate the situation outside the city. As long as there was even the slightest movement, he would immediately send out a signal to warn the captains in the city. But just as he passed the corner of the wall and passed through the darkness, an invisible divine soul shockwave suddenly came from the darkness. Buzz. The captain was caught off guard and suffered a heavy blow to his soul. He only felt a rumble in his mind and was stunned on the spot. Before he could come back to his senses, a large hand reached out from the darkness and grabbed his neck. The silver-armored captain was lifted up. He struggled with all his might, wanting to resist and break free, but he was powerless. He tried his best, but he could not make a sound. Only gurgling sounds came from his throat. Invisible divine soul power surged out from the large hand and violently attacked his soul. Soon the captain's soul was shattered, and his consciousness fell into eternal darkness. Then Ji Tianqing walked out of the darkness and possessed the captain's body. In the blink of an eye, he had become the captain of the Heaven Punisher race. Not only that, but he also took away the captain's divine soul memories. After standing in the darkness for a while, he refined the captain's memories and obtained a lot of useful information. Captain Barker? That sounds terrible. Luckily, I only need this identity for one night. Ji Tianqing muttered softly and continued to travel in the darkness, patrolling the city walls. 2 hours later, he had patrolled the city walls. He knew the distribution of the soldiers on the city walls, and the number of black armored guards like the back of his hand. Along the way, he also removed a dozen array nodes and destroyed 4 defensive arrays. No one noticed any of this. Only when the battle started and the divine arrays could not be activated would people realize that something was wrong. At midnight, Ji Tianqing took out his identity token and swaggered through the city gates into the divine capital. With Captain Barker's identity, he could do whatever he wanted in the divine capital. Other than the 4 strongest and most powerful captains, no one could restrain him. Thus, Ji Tianqing openly entered the divine palace and began his assassination journey. A silver-armored captain had just returned to his secret room to rest after a busy day of setting up the divine arrays. Whoosh! A figure suddenly appeared in the darkness in the corner of the secret room and stabbed out with a mysterious, pitch-black sword. In an instant, the captain's chest was pierced by the divine sword, and blood spurted out. On his chest, the scales with a few golden patterns were shattered, and the captain died on the spot. Even when the captain fell, he still could not die in peace. He did not know who the assassin was. 100 breaths later, Ji Tianqing used the law of space to directly pass through the thick wall, ignoring the protection of the divine arrays, and appeared in another secret room. A silver-armored captain sat cross-legged in the middle of the secret room, recuperating and quickly recovering his divine power. He sensed danger and suddenly opened his eyes, only to see a silver-armored captain in front of him. "Barker, what are you doing?" The captain furrowed his brows, looking at Ji Tianqing with both anger and confusion as he asked. However, he was answered by a pitch-black sword. Poof! The pitch-black, cold sword of burial of heaven instantly pierced through the captain's chest, and blood spurted out. Another captain died without even being able to call for help. Ji Tianqing's figure flashed and disappeared into the darkness. He went to find his next target. In the next hour, he constantly traveled through the divine palace, entering and exiting the various palaces like a ghost. One after another, the captains in the martial god realm died under his surprise attacks. A total of 12 captains were killed, but no one could resist. They did not even have time to send out a signal. At the same time, Bai Long was moving silently within the walls of the divine capital. Like Ji Tianqing, he was carrying out an assassination mission. The difference was that Ji Tianqing was assassinating the captains in the divine palace. Bai Long was assassinating the captains and commanders of the black armored guards within the city walls. As time passed, the lives of many heaven-seeking cultivators were taken away without anyone noticing. The night deepened, and the dark clouds in the sky became thicker. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.